graveyards are meant to be places of rest, peace, and remembrance. But in many small towns across America, some cemeteries hold secrets too dark to stay buried. From apparitions wandering among gravestones, to unexplained footsteps echoing through the tombstones, and shadowy figures glimpsed in the fog, these graveyards are home to more than just memories. Tonight, we'll explore 25 of the most haunted graveyards in small-town America, where the past refuses to rest, and the dead may still walk among the living. Maple Grove Cemetery in Vermont is an old, sprawling burial ground tucked into a quiet valley, surrounded by dense forests and rolling hills. Its history stretches back nearly 2 centuries, and the moss-covered tombstones tell stories of lives long past. During the day, the cemetery seems peaceful, almost picturesque, with sunlight filtering through the trees and the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. But when night falls, the atmosphere changes entirely. Locals and visitors alike have reported experiences that defy explanation. A lingering presence that seems tied to the cemetery's long and storied past. The first signs of something unusual often appear in the late evening, when mist begins to roll in from the surrounding woods. It is during these hours that shadowy figures have been observed drifting silently between the graves. Witnesses describe them as vague shapes, human in form but impossibly ethereal, moving without sound or disturbance. They glide between the headstones, passing through paths and open spaces as if the cemetery itself guides their movement. People who have encountered these figures report a profound sense of being watched, an eerie sensation that makes the hair on their arms stand on end. Many of the reports describe moments of auditory phenomena that accompany the visual sightings. Whispers of names, often familiar or historical, are said to echo through the mist, carried on the wind in tones both soft and chilling. Some have reported hearing their own names called out, even when completely alone. Others recount hearing conversations in voices that seem far away yet unmistakably close, as if carried from beyond the veil. The words are rarely coherent, more like fragments of memory than actual speech. But the effect is undeniably sense of being in the presence of something unseen and deeply aware. One frequent feature of these experiences is the appearance of floating orbs of light over the older tombstones. Witnesses describe them as small, glowing spheres that drift lazily above graves, sometimes lingering for moments before moving on. They vary in color from pale white to soft amber, and often leave no trace of illumination on the surrounding ground. Photographers and paranormal investigators who have attempted to capture images of these orbs report that their cameras often malfunction. Images appear blurred or overexposed, and in some cases, the orbs are visible only through the lens, not to the naked eye. Some theories suggest these lights are residual energies, manifestations of lives once lived, or spirits lingering over their final resting places. Visitors have also recounted strange physical sensations while walking through the cemetery. A sudden chill that cuts through clothing, an inexplicable pressure on the chest, or the feeling of being lightly brushed by something that isn't there are commonly reported. Dogs on leashes have reportedly refused to enter certain areas, barking or whining at seemingly empty spots. Even birds and small animals are said to avoid the oldest sections of the cemetery, leaving those areas eerily quiet compared to the rest of the grounds. One particularly chilling account comes from a local historian who spent years documenting the graves and the people buried there. While photographing headstones late at night, he reported seeing a figure moving among the graves, a tall, shadowy form that paused beside a particularly old tomb before fading into the mist. Moments later, he heard whispers of his own name, soft but unmistakable. The experience left him shaken, yet also determined to return and document the cemetery further. He later noted that the sections where the figure had appeared were among the oldest in the cemetery, dating back to the early 1800s. Some visitors report that these apparitions and phenomena are not threatening, but rather melancholy, as if the spirits are simply lingering, tied to memories or unresolved histories. Others feel a more ominous presence, particularly in areas associated with sudden or tragic deaths. Despite the varying experiences, There is a consensus among those who have visited at night. Maple Grove Cemetery is alive in a way that goes beyond the natural world. Its shadows, whispers, and floating lights suggest a place where the boundary between the living and the dead is thin, permeable, and constantly shifting. Paranormal investigators and researchers have visited Maple Grove Cemetery for decades, attempting to understand the mysterious occurrences. Audio recordings sometimes pick up unexplained voices or faint knocks on gravestones. Night vision cameras reveal shapes moving where no living person is present. EMF meters, which detect electromagnetic fluctuations, often spike near the oldest graves. While skeptics argue that fog, natural sounds, and optical illusions could explain some phenomena, the consistency and variety of accounts suggest something more profound at play. The legend of Maple Grove Cemetery has grown over time, attracting not only paranormal enthusiasts, but also local residents who recount stories passed down through generations. It is said that those who wander the cemetery at night with a respectful curiosity may glimpse these shadowy figures, hear whispered names, or witness the drifting orbs. But the cemetery also demands caution. Many warn that lingering too long or approaching the phenomena aggressively can lead to discomfort, sudden chills, or an overwhelming sense of unease. Ultimately, Maple Grove Cemetery remains a place of mystery and reverence. Its graves tell the stories of lives long past, while its shadows and lights hint at a lingering presence that refuses to be fully understood. Locals advise visiting only during daylight or with company, yet for those who are drawn to the unexplained, the cemetery offers an undeniable glimpse into a world where the veil between the living and the dead seems remarkably thin. Shadowy figures drift between the tombstones, whispers echo through the mist, and orbs of light float silently over graves, creating a haunting tableau that has captivated the imagination of all who wander its paths. The cemetery stands as a reminder that even in the quietest, most peaceful corners of Vermont, the unseen world is never far away, and the past is never truly gone. Riverside Cemetery in New Hampshire is a historic burial ground, nestled along the banks of a slow, winding river, its surface reflecting the moonlight on quiet nights. The cemetery dates back to the early 1800s, and its weathered tombstones, many etched with names long forgotten, line the gently rolling landscape. By day, Riverside is a place of reflection and solemn beauty. The trees casting dappled shadows over the graves, the sound of the river mingling with the rustle of leaves. But as the sun sets and darkness descends, the atmosphere changes. Visitors and locals alike have reported experiences that are both unsettling and inexplicable, as if the cemetery holds on to the lives that once walked its paths. The most commonly reported phenomenon is the appearance of phantom mourners, figures dressed in period clothing, standing silently among the graves. Witnesses describe seeing women in long dresses and bonnets, men in frock coats and top hats, as if they had stepped directly from the 19th century. These figures are usually stationary, frozen in posture, gazing at specific family plots or gravestones, but occasionally they appear to move slowly, drifting along the cemetery paths. Many who have encountered them report a sense of profound sadness emanating from the figures, a melancholy that seems to seep into the air, chilling visitors to the bone. One evening, a family visiting the cemetery to pay respects to ancestors reported a strange encounter. As they walked past an old section of the grounds, they noticed a small group of figures gathered near a family plot. The figures were dressed in clothing that clearly belonged to a bygone era, and though they appeared busy with mourning gestures, there was no sound, no whisper of conversation, no sobs, only the faint shimmer of movement in the moonlight. As the family approached, the figures vanished, leaving the air unusually cold, the ground around the graves seeming colder than anywhere else in the cemetery. The chill lingered long after they had left the area, an invisible reminder of the encounter. Other visitors report similar experiences throughout the cemetery. People walking the paths at night often feel sudden drops in temperature, so intense that the air feels almost tangible, pressing against them with an icy weight. Cold spots appear unpredictably, sometimes near the oldest tombstones, sometimes along empty pathways or near plots that have long been forgotten. These chilling pockets of air are often accompanied by fleeting glimpses of figure shapes that vanish the moment they are noticed, leaving only the residual sense of presence. Some witnesses describe the sensation as being watched, even when alone, and the feeling is enough to make the bravest visitor quicken their pace. The riverside adds another layer to the cemetery's mystique. On foggy nights, the water reflects pale, shimmering lights, and some visitors claim they have seen figures standing at the edge of the riverbank, observing silently. The reflection of these figures often appears in the water even after the figures themselves have vanished. Many believe these specters are drawn to the cemetery by the river, lingering where life and death intersect. Others speculate that the river acts as a threshold, a boundary between the living and the dead, and that the spirits of Riverside Cemetery use its mist and shadows to traverse that boundary, becoming briefly visible to those who dare to venture into the cemetery after dark. Paranormal investigators who have visited Riverside Cemetery often report equipment malfunctions, unexplained noises, and temperature fluctuations that defy natural explanation. EMF meters spike near certain family plots. Cameras capture shadowy shapes that do not appear to the naked eye, and digital recorders pick up faint whispers when no one else is present. Some investigators have attempted to communicate with the phantom mourners, asking questions aloud, only to receive silence or fleeting glimpses of movement, as if the spirits are aware but choose not to respond. These encounters reinforce the idea that Riverside Cemetery is a place where the living and the dead exist in close proximity, a place where the past refuses to remain buried. Locals often advise caution to anyone planning to visit at night. They tell stories of people who linger too long, reporting an increasing sensation of unease, sudden chills, or the feeling of being followed along the paths. Many of these stories share common elements. The figures are always dressed in period clothing, always near old family plots, and always vanish without warning. Even those who simply walk through during daylight report an unsettling atmosphere, as if the cemetery remembers them, the energy of the past pressing gently but insistently against the present. One particularly striking account comes from a visitor who had grown up near the cemetery. Returning decades later, she wandered among the graves at dusk, recalling stories her grandmother had told about Riverside Cemetery. She reported seeing a group of figures standing near the plot of a prominent 19th century family. The figures seemed engaged in quiet mourning, and as she watched, one figure turned slowly toward her, as if acknowledging her presence. She froze, feeling an icy grip around her chest, before the group dissipated into the shadows, leaving only silence and the lingering scent of damp earth. Riverside Cemetery continues to be a place of fascination, mystery, and reverence. Its weathered stones, quiet paths, and riverside location give it a timeless beauty, while the shadowy figures, cold spots, and whispers of the past ensure it remains a place of paranormal intrigue. For those who visit, the cemetery offers glimpses of lives long gone, spectral reminders of grief, memory, and the enduring presence of those who have departed. The phantom mourners of Riverside Cemetery stand as a silent testament to the power of history, the persistence of memory, and the thin, sometimes permeable, boundary between the living and the dead. Oakwood Cemetery in Ohio is a sprawling, historic burial ground that stretches over several acres, its rolling hills dotted with centuries-old trees and weathered tombstones. Established in the early 19th century, the cemetery became the final resting place for many veterans, including soldiers who fought in the Civil War. During the day, Oakwood appears serene, a quiet place for reflection and remembrance. But when night falls, the cemetery transforms into a site of eerie activity, where witnesses have reported encounters with spirits from the past, lingering memories of war, and unexplained phenomena that defy reason. The most commonly reported apparitions are ghostly soldiers, said to be from the Civil War era, pacing quietly among the rows of graves. Witnesses describe figures in period uniforms, some carrying rifles, others standing at attention near family plots or monuments dedicated to fallen soldiers. These spirits often appear alone or in small groups, moving slowly as though retracing their final journeys. Observers note that the soldiers' expressions, though faint and shadowy, convey a mix of solemnity and melancholy, a lingering imprint of their service and sacrifice. Some say that when these figures move through the cemetery, the air grows heavy and charged, as if the weight of history itself is pressing down. Alongside the sightings of ghostly soldiers, many visitors report hearing faint drum sounds echoing through the cemetery at night. The cadence is soft but unmistakable, reminiscent of military drumming from a bygone era. These sounds often appear without source, sometimes growing louder for moments before fading into the night. Witnesses describe the rhythm as steady and deliberate, evoking images of troops on parade or preparing for battle. At times, the drum beats seem synchronized with the movement of the apparitions, enhancing the unsettling feeling that the past has momentarily returned, replaying scenes long buried beneath the earth. Shadowy forms are another frequent occurrence at Oakwood. These figures often appear near monuments or gravestones, just at the edge of perception. Observers report glimpsing dark shapes standing silently or moving along the paths, disappearing when approached. Unlike the more detailed images of ghostly soldiers, these shadows are indistinct, sometimes taking only a few seconds to vanish. Witnesses often experience sudden chills or a sense of being watched during these moments. Many believe these shadowy forms represent the restless spirits of those who perished during the war, or perhaps individuals whose lives ended in tragedy and who remained tethered to the cemetery. One particularly chilling account comes from a local historian who frequented Oakwood Cemetery while researching Civil War veterans buried there. One night, as he photographed the monuments under the moonlight, he heard faint footsteps approaching from a gravel path. Turning slowly, he saw a figure in full Union uniform pacing near a monument. The soldier paused, as if observing him, before continuing down the row of graves. Moments later, the historian heard the distant sound of drums, soft at first, then fading into silence. When he returned to the path where he first saw the figure, there was no tracing, no footprints, no evidence of disturbance, just a quiet, empty cemetery. Visitors also report sensory experiences that heighten the sense of unease. Sudden temperature drops are common, particularly near monuments or older sections of the cemetery. Some describe the sensation as a chill that seeps into the bones, inexplicably cold even on warmer nights. Others have reported hearing whispered conversations, the faint clink of metal, or soft shuffling sounds that vanish when investigated. Dogs are often uneasy in these areas, barking at empty spaces or refusing to enter certain sections altogether. These phenomena suggest that Oakwood Cemetery holds more than memories. It is a space where the past continues to make its presence felt. Paranormal investigators have visited Oakwood for decades, documenting experiences with cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field meters. Recordings sometimes capture faint drum beats or whispered words, while cameras occasionally reveal shadowy figures or unexplained movements near monuments. EMF readings frequently spike near the oldest graves, particularly those of soldiers. While skeptics argue that these occurrences could be caused by wind, wildlife, or optical illusions, the consistency of reports over the years, coupled with the historical context, lends credence to the idea that Oakwood Cemetery is a site of genuine paranormal activity. The haunting of Oakwood is more than mere spectacle. It is intertwined with history. Those who witness the spirits of Civil War soldiers or hear the echo of distant drums describe a profound connection to the past. The apparitions, sounds, and shadows serve as reminders of sacrifice, of lives disrupted by conflict, and of the lingering imprint that trauma can leave on a place. Visitors often leave with a sense of awe mixed with unease, recognizing that these encounters are not malicious, but rather echoes of memory and unresolved presence. Locals warn that night visits to Oakwood Cemetery should be undertaken with respect and caution. The experiences, while fascinating, can be intense. Many report feeling a lingering heaviness or emotional weight long after leaving the grounds. It is a place where the past is palpably close, where the sacrifices of soldiers and the tragedies of the Civil War continue to ripple through the present. Oakwood Cemetery stands as a testament to history and the unseen. Its ghostly soldiers pacing rows of graves, faint drumbeats echoing through the night, and shadowy forms near monuments remind visitors that the past is never truly gone. For those who wander its paths after dark, the cemetery offers a haunting encounter with memory, legacy, and the lingering spirits of a time when the nation itself was at war. Oakwood is not just a resting place for the dead, it's a space where history walks among the living, and where the echoes of sacrifice and sorrow remain visible to those who look closely enough. Greenwood Cemetery in Maine is a centralized old burial ground tucked into a quiet, forested valley. Its winding paths, lined with weathered tombstones and ancient trees whose branches seem to cradle the sky. Established in the early 1800s, the cemetery holds the remains of generations of families, as well as unmarked graves of those whose names have been lost to history. By day, Greenwood appears serene and somber, a place for reflection and remembrance, where sunlight filters through the leaves and the wind whispers through the trees. But as night falls, the cemetery takes on a distinctly otherworldly character, drawing the attention of locals and visitors who recount experiences that defy explanation. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at Greenwood Cemetery is the appearance of unexplained lights after dark. Witnesses describe small, flickering orbs that float above the graves or hover along the pathways, glowing with a soft, otherworldly luminescence. The lights often move in patterns that seem deliberate, drifting lazily through the air or darting quickly between tombstones before vanishing entirely. Many observers report that the orbs respond to their presence, lingering nearby or moving away as if aware of being watched. Photographs and videos captured by visitors sometimes reveal these lights in more detail, yet the images often show distortions or anomalies, suggesting that the lights may exist in a realm partially beyond perception. Another commonly reported sight is the apparition of figures dressed in long coats, walking the cemetery paths at night. These ghostly figures are typically tall and slender, with indistinct facial features, and they move with a deliberate, measured gait. Witnesses describe them as gliding rather than walking, often disappearing suddenly when approached. Some of these apparitions are seen following the same winding paths repeatedly, as if tracing familiar routes from a lifelong past. Others appear to stand still near certain graves, as though observing or guarding them. Those who have encountered the figures report an immediate sense of unease, an awareness that these presences are neither malevolent nor fully corporeal, but deeply tied to the cemetery itself. Perhaps the most haunting reports involve ghostly children seen playing silently among the tombstones. Locals tell stories of small figures running between graves, laughing faintly yet inaudibly, or gathering near family plots and disappearing when approached. These spectral children often appear in groups, dressed in clothing reminiscent of the late 19th or early 20th century. Their movements eerily natural, but weightless, almost floating above the ground. Witnesses who try to interact with them often find that the children vanish the moment they attempt to call out or approach, leaving behind only the impression of presence, and sometimes tiny, unexplained footprints that fade before they can be examined. One particularly chilling account comes from a man who regularly walked his dog through Greenwood Cemetery in the late evening. He noticed a faint glow hovering near an old family plot, and as he drew closer, he saw a small group of children playing, their faces obscured by shadows. The dog barked, but refused to approach. The man watched for several moments, mesmerized, before the figures slowly dissolved into the mist that had begun to gather, leaving the air icy cold and filled with a profound silence. Even after leaving the cemetery, he described feeling an unshakable sense of being observed, as if the spirits of Greenwood had marked his presence. Ghost hunters and paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Greenwood Cemetery, hoping to capture evidence of these mysterious phenomena. Audio recordings sometimes pick up faint laughter, whispers, or footsteps when no one else is present. Temperature fluctuations are common, with sudden, inexplicable drops near certain graves, particularly those associated with the oldest sections of the cemetery. Even instruments designed to detect electromagnetic anomalies often behave unpredictably, spiking near the orbs or along paths frequently traversed by apparitions. The history of Greenwood Cemetery adds depth to these stories. Many of the unmarked graves belong to children who died young, victims of disease or accident in an era when infant mortality was high. The older sections hold graves of prominent families, veterans, and townspeople whose lives shaped the local community. Some theorists suggest that the spirits seen at Greenwood are residual energies, echoes of lives cut short or memories so strong they remain imprinted on the land. Others believe the cemetery is a place where the boundary between the living and the dead is unusually thin, allowing glimpses of a hidden world to emerge under the cover of darkness. Locals who are familiar with Greenwood often offer warnings to visitors. They advise entering the cemetery with respect and caution, particularly at night. Those who linger too long report feeling weighed down by an invisible presence, experiencing chills, unexplained sounds, or the sensation of eyes following them through the paths. Yet many who approach the cemetery with reverence describe encounters that are more awe-inspiring than frightening. Glimpses into a world where the past lingers in a tangible, visible form. The combination of floating lights, apparitions in long coats, and ghostly children makes Greenwood Cemetery a place of profound intrigue and supernatural curiosity. Each night brings the possibility of an encounter, and those who visit often leave with a mix of wonder and unease. The cemetery is a space where memory and spirit seem to coexist, a reminder that the stories of the past are never truly buried, and that those who have passed may continue to move, watch, and play among the living. Greenwood Cemetery remains one of Maine's most enigmatic and haunting locations. Its paths wind through centuries of history, its tombstones bear silent witness to lives long gone, and its nighttime apparitions offer a glimpse into a world beyond comprehension. The floating orbs, the figures in long coats, and the playful spectral children create a tableau of haunting beauty, a reminder that even in the quietest corners of the state, the veil between the living and the dead is never entirely closed. Those who wander Greenwood at night find themselves part of a story still unfolding, a place where the echoes of the past are alive, visible, and waiting to be seen. Elmwood Cemetery in Pennsylvania is a historic burial ground tucked into a quiet corner of the state, surrounded by tall oaks and maples that sway gently in the wind. Established in the early 1800s, the cemetery spans several acres and holds the graves of generations of local families, veterans, and prominent figures from the region's past. During the day, Elmwood appears serene, with sunlight filtering through the trees and birdsong filling the air. But as night descends, the cemetery takes on an eerie, otherworldly atmosphere. Locals and visitors have recounted experiences that are both unsettling and mysterious, hinting at a presence that lingers among the gravestones long after the living have departed. One of the most common phenomena reported at Elmwood is the appearance of figures in hooded cloaks. Witnesses describe them as tall, shadowy forms, their faces obscured beneath deep hoods, moving silently along the cemetery's winding paths. These figures rarely approach directly, but their presence is undeniable. Some appear standing at the edge of a family plot, silently observing, while others glide between rows of graves, disappearing into the darkness without a trace. Visitors often report feeling an intense sense of being watched when these hooded figures are nearby, a sensation that grows stronger the longer one remains in the cemetery after dark. Alongside the visual apparitions, many visitors have reported hearing unexplained footsteps on the gravel paths, even when they are alone. The sound of shoes crunching over the stones echoes in the still night air, sometimes approaching from behind, sometimes moving along the paths at a distance. Those who have experienced these footsteps often describe a sudden, almost instinctive fear, as if an unseen presence is tracking them. The steps seem to appear and vanish without pattern, leaving no sign of who or what might be responsible. Some have tried calling out, but the footsteps continue uninterrupted, fading only when the witness leaves the area. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of Elmwood Cemetery is the presence of voices whispering prayers in the darkness. Visitors report hearing faint murmurs of words, phrases, or entire prayers that seem to emanate from empty spaces. The voices often carry a sense of solemnity and reverence, though their source is never visible. Some describe the whispers as echoing through the trees or drifting along the paths between graves. Occasionally, the words are clear enough to recognize as traditional prayers or chants, while other times they are fragmented and unintelligible. The experience can leave a profound impression, a mix of awe and unease that lingers long after leaving the cemetery. One particularly memorable account comes from a local historian who spent several nights walking Elmwood paths while documenting the oldest grave. On one foggy evening, he reported seeing a hooded figure standing near a cluster of 19th-century tombstones. As he drew closer, the figure turned slowly, moving along the path, its footsteps echoing faintly against the gravel. When he attempted to follow, the figure vanished, leaving only a lingering chill in the air. Moments later, he heard soft whispers of prayer emanating from the same spot, though no one else was present. The experience left him shaken but determined to continue his research, aware that Elmwood was a place where the past and present intersected in ways beyond ordinary understanding. Other visitors have reported being startled by multiple hooded figures simultaneously, appearing at different points along the cemetery paths. These figures often vanish when approached, leaving only the feeling of a presence that refuses to be fully revealed. The combination of visual apparitions, audible footsteps, and whispering voices creates an atmosphere that is both compelling and disorienting. Many who visit Elmwood at night describe the experience as a journey through a space where the boundary between the living and the dead is unusually thin, a place where history and memory manifests in tangible ways. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Elmwood Cemetery, attempting to document the unusual activity with audio and video equipment, as well as electromagnetic field meters. Some investigators report capturing shadowy shapes on night vision cameras that appear to move independently of the wind or passing wildlife. Audio recordings sometimes pick up faint whispers, prayers, or murmured words that are absent to the human ear at the time. EMF readings spike near certain older plots, particularly those associated with 18th and 19th century families, while skeptics argue that fog, acoustics, or imagination may explain some occurrences. The consistency of reports over decades suggests that Elmwood Cemetery is a location of genuine paranormal phenomena. The history of Elmwood adds to its mystique. Many of the oldest graves belong to families who played central roles in the development of the local community, as well as soldiers who served in early American conflicts. Some graves are unmarked, adding an extra layer of mystery to the site. Local legend holds that the hooded figures and whispering voices are manifestations of the spirits of the departed, bound to the cemetery, either by unresolved events or by the strong attachment to the land where they were laid to rest. Others speculate that Elmwood itself may act as a conduit between the living and the dead, with the energy of generations stored in the trees, soil, and monuments. Locals advise caution to those who visit Elmwood at night. While many experiences are not hostile, lingering too long can evoke intense unease, sudden chills, or the sensation of being followed by unseen presences. Yet, for those who approach with respect, the cemetery offers a rare glimpse into a world where memory, history, and spirit coexist. The combination of hooded figures, footsteps on gravel, and whispering prayers ensures that Elmwood Cemetery remains one of Pennsylvania's most intriguing and haunting locations. For visitors willing to explore its paths, Elmwood offers an experience unlike any other. It is a place where the past is palpable, where voices and shadows echo across time, and where the presence of the departed can be felt in ways that defy explanation. The hooded figures gliding silently through the darkness, the footsteps that appear with no visible source, and the ethereal whispers of prayers all combine to create a haunting tableau that lingers in memory. Elmwood Cemetery stands as a testament to the power of history, memory, and the thin veil that separates the living from the dead. A place where the night reveals mysteries that the daylight cannot. St. Mary's Cemetery in Kentucky is a quiet, historic burial ground nestled on the outskirts of a small town, surrounded by rolling hills and thick stands of cedar and oak. Established in the late 1700s, it is the final resting place of early settlers, pioneers, and prominent local families. By day, the cemetery exudes a peaceful, almost pastoral charm, with sunlit paths winding through rows of weathered gravestones, some leaning with age and covered in moss. But as night falls, St. Mary's takes on an entirely different presence. Those who venture there after dark often speak of experiences that defy logic, a sense that the spirits of the past remain very much alive, lingering among the graves and mausoleums. Perhaps the most frequently reported phenomena at St. Mary's involves shadowy figures, particularly those resembling nuns. Witnesses describe them as tall, cloaked forms moving silently between gravestones, their faces obscured by deep hoods or veils. They appear to drift rather than walk, gliding across the cemetery with deliberate purpose. Some observers have seen these figures standing in contemplation beside family plots, while others report them moving along the main paths, vanishing suddenly when approached. Despite their ghostly appearance, many who encounter them report a palpable sense of sorrow or devotion emanating from the apparitions, a feeling that these spirits are tied to the religious or spiritual practices of the early settlers buried at St. Mary's. In addition to the spectral nuns, there are frequent reports of mausoleum doors opening and closing on their own. Visitors have described approaching these stone structures, only to see the heavy doors slowly swing outward, as if inviting them inside, or closing abruptly when no wind or other natural force is present. Some who have ventured closer report a sudden rush of cold air emanating from within, accompanied by the faint scent of incense or wax. Paranormal investigators note that these occurrences often happen at the oldest mausoleums, suggesting a lingering attachment to the structures themselves, or perhaps to the individuals entombed within. The energy in St. Mary's Cemetery is another defining feature. Witnesses consistently report feeling a cold, oppressive atmosphere that intensifies as darkness falls. Even on relatively warm nights, certain areas of the cemetery are described as freezing to the touch, with a heaviness in the air that presses down on the chest and spine. Visitors often feel an invisible presence nearby, as though unseen eyes are watching from between the gravestones or from the shadows of the trees. Some describe a sensation of being guided or herded along the paths by an unseen force, while others experience sudden bouts of dizziness or disorientation when lingering too long in the oldest sections of the grounds. One particularly chilling account comes from a local historian who had spent years documenting St. Mary's gravestones and the families interred there. One night, while photographing the oldest section under a full moon, he reported seeing a nun-like figure moving deliberately between graves. As he raised his camera, the figure vanished instantly, leaving only a lingering cold that seemed to seep into his very bones. Moments later, he noticed the doors of a nearby mausoleum slowly creaking open, as if responding to the presence of the ghostly nun. The historian described a profound sense of unease, a feeling that the cemetery was not simply a resting place for the dead, but a space where the past continued to assert itself in subtle and sometimes frightening ways. Other visitors report hearing faint sounds that accompany these ghostly sights. Soft footsteps on gravel, distant murmurs, or the occasional whisper of prayer can be heard when the cemetery is otherwise silent. Some claim to have felt gentle brushes on their arms or shoulders, as if the spirits are acknowledging their presence. The combination of visual apparitions, moving mausoleum doors, and intangible sensations creates an atmosphere that is both captivating and unnerving, drawing those who are curious while warning the unprepared to respect the space. Paranormal investigators have explored St. Mary's extensively, documenting the phenomena with cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field meters. Night vision cameras sometimes capture shadowy forms moving between gravestones, while audio devices pick up faint murmurs, chanting, or rustling sounds when no one else is present. EMF readings spike unpredictably in the oldest sections, especially near mausoleums or along narrow paths between graves. Investigators suggest that the strong spiritual presence could be tied to the cemetery's long history and the deeply rooted faith of the early settlers, whose devotion and struggles may have left lingering energy in the grounds. The historical context of St. Mary's Cemetery adds another layer to its haunting. Many of the nuns reportedly seen in the cemetery were part of religious orders that cared for the sick, assisted the dying, or taught children in the community. Their dedication to service and faith, combined with the hardships of early life in Kentucky, may have left a residual imprint, manifesting as the apparitions and supernatural occurrences reported today. Similarly, the settlers buried in the older sections faced disease, accidents, and the harsh realities of frontier life, which may explain the cold, heavy energy that permeates the cemetery at night. Locals advise caution to those who choose to visit St. Mary's after dark. While many experiences are not overtly malevolent, the oppressive energy, sudden chills, and eerie apparitions can be disorienting or overwhelming. Visitors are encouraged to remain respectful, to move quietly, and to avoid lingering near mausoleums for prolonged periods. Despite the unsettling phenomena, many who visit the cemetery describe a strange beauty and solemnity in the presence of these spirits, an awareness of history and devotion that transcends the physical world. St. Mary's Cemetery stands as one of Kentucky's most mysterious and haunting locations. Its shadowy nuns, moving mausoleum doors, and cold, oppressive energy provide a glimpse into a past that refuses to remain buried. For those who venture along its paths at night, the cemetery is not merely a resting place for the dead, it's a living testament to the faith, devotion, and lingering presence of the early settlers whose lives shaped the community. The spirits of St. Mary's continue to watch, walk, and whisper, ensuring that the history of the cemetery remains vivid, haunting, and unforgettable. Hillcrest Cemetery in Indiana is a sprawling, historic burial ground. Its rolling landscape dotted with ancient oak trees and weathered gravestones that date back to the 1800s. Nestled on the outskirts of a small town, the cemetery is framed by gently sloping hills and quiet country roads, giving it a secluded, almost timeless quality. By day, Hillcrest offers a peaceful respite, with sunlight filtering through the branches and birdsong echoing among the graves. But as dusk falls and shadows lengthen, the atmosphere changes. Locals have long reported strange occurrences of apparitions among the oak trees, faint lantern lights flickering between graves, and ghostly figures near the old chapel, creating a reputation for Hillcrest as one of Indiana's most haunted cemeteries. One of the most frequently reported phenomena involves apparitions near the old oak trees that dominate the cemetery. Witnesses describe seeing shadowy figures moving slowly among the roots and branches, often appearing translucent or fading in and out of view. These figures are sometimes tall and imposing, while other times smaller and more fleeting, as though caught between worlds. Many who have observed them report a sudden chill in the air, a sensation that seems to press down on the chest and spine. Some claim that the figures seem aware of their presence, pausing briefly or turning in their direction before vanishing into the darkness. Another common experience at Hillcrest Cemetery is the sight of faint lantern lights moving along the pathways between graves. These lights are small, warm glows that appear to float in midair, sometimes bobbing gently as if carried by unseen hands. Visitors often follow them for several moments, drawn by curiosity, only to have the lights vanish suddenly or disappear behind trees and tombstones. Some locals believe these lanterns are spirits of past caretakers or mourners, lingering to guide visitors safely through the cemetery, while others speculate that they may be residual energy, echoes of funerary rituals performed in earlier times. Whatever the explanation, the lights are widely reported and lend an otherworldly, almost cinematic quality to the cemetery at night. The old chapel at Hillcrest is another focal point for ghostly activity. Constructed in the mid-1800s and now rarely used, the chapel is a modest stone building with arched windows and a steep, shingled roof. Visitors report seeing figures standing silently near its entrance or along the surrounding pathway, motionless and imposing. These figures often appear human in shape, but their features are indistinct, shrouded in darkness or shadow. Some observers describe feeling a heavy, oppressive energy in the vicinity of the chapel, a weight that seems to press on the senses and amplify the feeling of being watched. On occasion, footsteps or muffled voices are heard emanating from inside, though the building is empty and locked. One particularly memorable account comes from a local historian who had been documenting Hillcrest's oldest graves. One evening, while walking near a grove of oak trees, he saw a faint lantern light flickering between the stones. He followed it carefully, noting the path it took among graves that were over a century old. As he approached, he noticed a shadowy figure standing silently near one of the largest oaks, motionless and watching him. Before he could react, both the figure and the lantern vanished, leaving the historian with a lingering sense of cold and a palpable awareness of presence. The experience left him shaken, yet he returned multiple times, determined to observe the phenomena further, and reported similar experiences on each visit. Other visitors describe a sense of being followed or observed while walking Hillcrest's paths at night. Some hear soft footsteps crunching on gravel or the rustle of leaves when no one else is nearby. Others have reported muffled whispers or faint voices, though the words are often unintelligible. Dogs accompanying visitors sometimes grow uneasy, barking at empty spaces or refusing to enter certain areas. These experiences contribute to a reputation for Hillcrest as a place where the living and dead coexist in subtle, unnerving ways. Paranormal investigators have taken a special interest in Hillcrest Cemetery. Using audio recorders, night vision cameras, and electromagnetic field meters, they have documented a variety of anomalies. Cameras sometimes capture shadowy figures moving through oak groves or along paths, while audio recordings occasionally pick up whispers or faint sounds of footsteps that cannot be explained. EMF readings often spike near the chapel and around certain graves, indicating unusual energy in these areas. While skeptics suggest wind, animals, or visual illusions might account for some of the phenomena, the sheer consistency and number of eyewitness accounts lend credibility to claims of supernatural activity. The history of Hillcrest Cemetery may help explain the persistence of these phenomena. Many of the graves are of early settlers who endured harsh conditions, disease, and the hardships of frontier life. The old oak trees, some of which predate the cemetery itself, may have absorbed residual energy from centuries of life and death. The chapel was once the site of countless services, funerals, and private prayers, and some believe that the energy of these moments has left lasting impressions. Whether the spirits are those of settlers, mourners, or caretakers, their presence continues to shape the atmosphere of the cemetery long after their deaths. Locals advise caution to anyone venturing into Hillcrest Cemetery at night. The experiences, while not necessarily hostile, can be intense. Sudden chills, feelings of oppression, or encounters with shadowy figures can be disorienting or unsettling. Yet many who approach the cemetery with respect find themselves captivated by the haunting beauty of the night, the interplay of shadow and light, and the sense of history manifesting in living form. Hillcrest Cemetery remains one of Indiana's most mysterious and compelling locations. Its apparitions among ancient oaks, faint lantern lights gliding between graves, and ghostly figures near the old chapel create a haunting tableau that continues to intrigue locals and visitors alike. For those who wander its paths after dark, Hillcrest is not merely a cemetery, it is a space where the past is visible, where history and spirit converge, and where the unseen continues to watch, move, and linger in the shadows. Pine Grove Cemetery in Massachusetts is a sprawling historic burial ground, tucked into the rolling hills of a quiet rural town. Established in the early 1700s, it is one of the oldest cemeteries in the region, home to the graves of colonial settlers, Revolutionary War veterans, and generations of local families. By day, Pine Grove is a serene landscape, with rows of moss-covered gravestones, towering pines, and open fields bathed in sunlight. But as night falls, the cemetery transforms into a place of mystery and unease. Visitors have long reported strange experiences, including phantom wagons and horses traveling through the grounds, ghostly figures in long coats, and sudden, inexplicable chills that sweep across the open fields, creating a reputation for Pine Grove as one of Massachusetts' most haunted cemeteries. One of the most frequently reported phenomena involves phantom wagons and horses moving through the cemetery at night. Witnesses describe hearing the unmistakable creak of wooden wheels over gravel, accompanied by the soft clatter of hooves, even when the cemetery is entirely empty. Some have seen shadowy outlines of horse-drawn wagons moving between graves, sometimes guided by indistinct figures holding reins. The apparitions are often fleeting, disappearing into the darkness before a closer look can be taken. Those who have encountered them report a strong sense of realism. The smell of horses, the sound of harnesses, and the weight of presence in the night air all contribute to the unnerving authenticity of the experience. Some locals speculate that these phantom wagons are echoes of funerals or other historical events, residual impressions of the cemetery's long and storied past. In addition to the ghostly wagons, many visitors report seeing figures in long coats walking silently among the gravestones. These apparitions are typically tall and slender, their faces obscured by shadow, and they move with deliberate, measured steps. Witnesses often describe a profound sense of being watched as they wander through the cemetery, a feeling that grows stronger in the older sections of the grounds. Some of the figures appear to pause near specific graves, as if paying homage or guarding them, while others are seen moving along the pathways and vanishing when approached. These ghostly figures create an eerie atmosphere, blending seamlessly with the dense trees and open fields, making the night feel alive with unseen observers. Perhaps the most unsettling experiences reported at Pine Grove Cemetery are the sudden chills that sweep across the open fields. Visitors describe walking through the cemetery on calm nights when the air is warm, only to feel intense, localized drops in temperature. The cold often seems to follow them, appearing near old gravestones or along tree-lined paths, and disappears as quickly as it arrives. Some report goosebumps, a tingling sensation along the spine, and a feeling of heaviness that presses down on the chest. These chills are frequently accompanied by an eerie silence, broken only by the whisper of the wind or the faint echo of sounds that cannot be traced. Locals believe that these sensations are tied to the spirits that linger in the cemetery, a tangible reminder of lives that once walked the same grounds centuries ago. One particularly memorable account comes from a young couple who visited Pine Grove Cemetery one autumn evening. They reported hearing the clatter of hooves and the creak of wagon wheels as they walked along a gravel path, looking toward a cluster of old pine trees. They saw the faint outline of a wagon and horses moving between gravestones, guided by a shadowy figure in a long coat. When they tried to approach, the figures vanished instantly, leaving only the sound of their own footsteps echoing in the darkness. Moments later, they felt an icy breeze sweep across the open field, chilling them to the bone. The experience left them shaken, yet they returned to the cemetery several times afterward, hoping to witness the mysterious phenomena again. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Pine Grove Cemetery, using audio recorders, night vision cameras, and electromagnetic field meters to document the activity. Recordings often capture the sounds of hooves, wheels, and faint whispers, while cameras occasionally reveal shadowy figures moving among the gravestones. EMF readings frequently spike in the oldest sections of the cemetery, particularly near graves of Revolutionary War veterans and colonial families. While skeptics argue that the phenomena could be explained by animals, wind, or imagination, the sheer consistency and number of eyewitness reports suggest that something extraordinary occurs in Pine Grove at night. The history of Pine Grove Cemetery adds depth to the haunting. Many of the graves belong to early settlers who lived through harsh winters, disease outbreaks, and the uncertainties of colonial life. Funeral processions in horse-drawn wagons were a common sight in the cemetery during its early years, and the ghostly wagons observed today may be echoes of those solemn journeys. Similarly, the figures in long coats may represent mourners, caretakers, or watchful spirits who linger to protect the grounds. The cemeteries, wide open fields, dotted with old pine trees and graves, provide an ideal environment for residual energy to manifest, allowing visitors to experience phenomena that bridge centuries. Locals who frequent Pine Grove Cemetery advise respect and caution when visiting at night. While most encounters are not hostile, the combination of apparitions, phantom wagons, and sudden chills can be disorienting and unnerving. Many visitors recommend approaching quietly, observing without attempting to interact, and leaving the cemetery if the sensations become overwhelming. Those who do so often leave with a sense of awe, a connection to the past, and a profound appreciation for the history and mystery embedded in the grounds. Pine Grove Cemetery remains one of Massachusetts' most compelling and enigmatic locations. The phantom, wagons, and horses, ghostly figures in long coats, and inexplicable chills all combine to create an atmosphere of eerie beauty and haunting intrigue for those who wander its paths after dark. Pine Grove is not merely a resting place for the dead, it is a living testament to the stories, struggles, and spirits of the past. The cemetery continues to captivate locals and visitors alike, offering glimpses into a world where history, memory, and the supernatural intersect in ways that cannot be fully explained. A place where the unseen continues to move, watch, and linger long into the night. Fairview Cemetery in New York is a historic burial ground nestled on the outskirts of a quiet town, surrounded by rolling hills and dense clusters of maple and oak trees. Established in the early 1800s, it is the final resting place of generations of townsfolk, veterans, and victims of tragic accidents. By day, Fairview is a picturesque and solemn space, with sunlight filtering through the trees and birdsong echoing among rows of weathered gravestones. But as night falls, the cemetery transforms into a place of mystery and unease, drawing visitors and locals alike who recount chilling experiences. Figures with glowing eyes, unseen hands brushing against gravestones, and echoes of cries piercing the stillness of the night. These reports have earned Fairview a reputation as one of New York's most haunted cemeteries. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at Fairview Cemetery involves figures with glowing eyes. Witnesses describe seeing humanoid shapes emerging from the darkness, their eyes emitting an eerie, unnatural glow that seems to pierce the night. These figures often appear between rows of gravestones or near the cemetery's older, unmarked plots. Many who have encountered them report a profound sense of fear, as though the beings are aware of their presence, observing silently before vanishing into the shadows. The glow in the eyes is sometimes described as red, sometimes as a pale, ghostly white, and it often lingers for several seconds after the figure has disappeared, leaving witnesses shaken and alert to every movement around them. In addition to the glowing-eyed figures, visitors have reported feeling unseen hands brushing against gravestones. These sensations are sudden and fleeting, often accompanied by a chill that seems to seep into the skin and bone. Those experiencing it describe the feeling as light but unmistakable, like a presence brushing past them while leaving no visible trace. The phenomenon often occurs near the oldest sections of the cemetery, where the gravestones are covered in moss or partially sunken into the earth. Some speculate that these touches are gestures of warning, mourning, or acknowledgement from spirits unable to fully cross into the living world. Regardless of interpretation, the encounters leave a lasting impression, a tangible sense that Fairview Cemetery is alive with unseen forces. Echoes of cries are another hallmark of Fairview's haunting. Visitors often recount hearing muffled screams or sobs drifting through the cemetery, sometimes near graves of individuals who died in tragic accidents or violent circumstances. The cries are described as heart-wrenching, carrying a tone of desperation or anguish that seems to transcend time. Many who hear these sounds report a sudden emotional response, an overwhelming sense of sorrow or empathy, as though the pain of the past is being relived in the present. The echoes are unpredictable, appearing without warning and vanishing just as quickly, leaving behind a profound sense of emptiness and a lingering tension in the air. One particularly chilling account comes from a local resident who had ventured into Fairview Cemetery after dark to photograph the old gravestones. Walking along a narrow path between two crumbling headstones, he noticed a figure with glowing eyes standing several yards ahead. The eyes seemed fixed on him, unblinking, and the shape remained perfectly still as he approached. Suddenly, he felt a light brush along his hand, as though an unseen presence had passed directly through him. Heart pounding, he looked back toward the glowing eyes, only to find the figure gone, leaving the space empty but still charged with an unsettling energy. Moments later, he heard a faint, high-pitched cry drifting across the cemetery, and he hurriedly left the grounds, shaken but unable to forget the experience. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Fairview Cemetery to document its unusual activity. Using night vision cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field meters, they have captured a variety of unexplained phenomena. Shadowy figures occasionally appear on video footage, moving silently between graves or disappearing into the trees. Audio devices sometimes pick up cries, whispers, or muffled footsteps that cannot be explained by natural causes. EMF readings frequently spike in the older sections of the cemetery, particularly near gravestones associated with tragic deaths or historical accidents. While skeptics argue that wind, wildlife, or human imagination may account for some experiences, the sheer consistency of eyewitness reports over decades points to a deeper mystery. The history of Fairview Cemetery adds further weight to its reputation. Many of the oldest graves belong to residents who died in accidents, fires, or sudden illnesses during the town's early years. Some plots mark the resting place of entire families lost to epidemics, leaving behind a sense of unfinished business and unresolved sorrow. The landscape itself, with its towering trees and uneven terrain, amplifies the sensation of being watched or followed, creating natural conditions that heighten the eerie atmosphere. Paranormal enthusiasts often suggest that the glowing-eyed figures, unseen touches, and cries are residual imprints of these tragedies, echoing across time to remind visitors of lives cut short. Locals advise caution when visiting Fairview Cemetery, especially after dark. While many encounters are not overtly hostile, the combined effect of shadowy figures, spectral touches, and echoing cries can be disorienting or overwhelming. Visitors are encouraged to move quietly, remain aware of their surroundings, and treat the cemetery with respect. Many who heed this advice report feeling a strange sense of connection, an awareness of history and memory that is intensified by the supernatural presence. Fairview Cemetery remains one of New York's most enigmatic and haunted locations. Its glowing-eyed figures, unseen hands brushing gravestones, and echoes of cries create a haunting and unforgettable experience for those who venture among its paths. For visitors, Fairview is more than a cemetery. It is a place where tragedy, history, and the supernatural intersect, offering glimpses of the past that refuse to remain buried, and a reminder that some spirits never truly leave the spaces they once inhabited. Cedar Hill Cemetery in Connecticut is a historic and expansive burial ground, quietly tucked away amid rolling hills and thick stands of cedar and maple trees. Established in the early 1800s, it is the resting place of generations of local residents, prominent families, and veterans who served in wars spanning centuries. By day, Cedar Hill offers a serene, almost idyllic landscape, with sun-dappled paths weaving between gravestones, towering monuments, and flowering shrubs. The air carries the gentle hum of birds and the rustle of leaves in the wind. But as night falls, the cemetery transforms into a place steeped in mystery and the unexplained. Visitors report phenomena that defy ordinary explanation: floating lights drifting through the fog, ghostly apparitions near old monuments, and the unsettling sensation of being watched from every direction. One of the most frequently observed phenomena at Cedar Hill Cemetery involves strange, floating lights appearing in the fog. Witnesses describe them as small, glowing orbs that hover in midair, sometimes moving along paths or between gravestones. The lights often appear at dusk or in the late evening when the fog rolls in, creating an ethereal and otherworldly effect. Many observers note that the lights seem to respond to human presence, moving subtly as if avoiding direct approach or drawing visitors deeper into the cemetery. Some speculate that these lights are spirits of the deceased, lingering to guide or warn the living, while others suggest they are residual energy, echoes of rituals or events from centuries past. Regardless of origin, the lights leave a lasting impression on those who encounter them, casting a mysterious glow over the fog-laden grounds. In addition to the floating lights, ghostly apparitions are a common sight near Cedar Hills, older monuments, and mausoleums. Witnesses often describe shadowy figures standing silently beside gravestones, or occasionally drifting along the cemetery's winding paths. These figures are typically humanoid in shape but indistinct in features, cloaked in darkness, or appearing partially transparent. Many who have seen them report feeling a strong presence, a sense that the apparitions are aware of their attention. Some figures seem to linger near certain family plots or monuments, suggesting a connection to those buried there, while others are seen gliding past without notice. The apparitions are sometimes accompanied by sudden chills, a lowering of the temperature that can be startling in an otherwise calm night, intensifying the sense of otherworldliness. Perhaps the most unnerving experience reported at Cedar Hills Cemetery is the pervasive feeling of being watched. Visitors consistently describe a sensation of eyes tracking their movements from every direction, even when no one else is present. The feeling often intensifies in foggy or shadowed areas, around large monuments, and beneath towering trees. Some report an almost tactile pressure, like invisible hands pressing gently but firmly against their backs or shoulders, while others describe a heightened awareness, an inability to shake the feeling that something unseen is moving just beyond their field of vision. Dogs and pets accompanying visitors sometimes react to this presence, barking or refusing to enter certain areas, reinforcing the sense that something unusual occupies the cemetery. One particularly memorable encounter occurred when a local historian visited Cedar Hill to document the oldest graves for a research project. Walking along a fog-filled path lined with Victorian-era monuments, he noticed a faint, glowing light drifting between two gravestones. As he followed it, he saw a shadowy figure standing near an elaborate monument, completely still, as though observing him. The historian described a cold sensation creeping up his spine and an overwhelming sense of awareness, as though he were not alone in the cemetery. When he attempted to step closer, the figure and the light vanished simultaneously, leaving him with a lingering chill and the eerie impression that he had glimpsed something beyond the natural world. Other visitors describe hearing unexplained sounds while walking the cemetery at night, footsteps crunching on gravel, soft whispers carried by the fog, and distant murmurs that cannot be traced to any source are commonly reported. Some have felt sudden gusts of cold wind, as if directed by unseen hands, or experienced fleeting touches along the arm or shoulder. Even the most skeptical visitors often report a heightened sense of unease, particularly in the older sections where monuments lean and gravestones are cracked or moss-covered. These sensations combine to create an atmosphere of tension and anticipation, making Cedar Hill both mesmerizing and unnerving to those who enter after dark. Paranormal investigators frequently visit Cedar Hill Cemetery to document its unexplained activity, using night vision cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field meters. They capture evidence that some claim supports the presence of spirits. Shadowy figures occasionally appear on camera, moving between gravestones or around monuments, while audio devices record faint whispers, footsteps, or murmurs that have no identifiable source. EMF readings often spike near large monuments or in fog-dense areas, suggesting an energy presence that correlates with witness accounts, while skeptics attribute some experiences to imagination, fog, or natural phenomena. The consistency and volume of reports over decades make Cedar Hill a focal point for those intrigued by the supernatural. The history of Cedar Hill Cemetery may help explain its haunted reputation. Many of the oldest graves belong to individuals who died tragically, whether through illness, accidents, or other unfortunate events. Monuments erected in the 19th century often commemorate entire families lost to disease or disaster, adding a layer of sorrow and memory to the grounds. Paranormal enthusiasts suggest that both the physical landscape and the emotional history of the cemetery contribute to the ongoing supernatural activity observed there. Locals recommend caution for anyone visiting Cedar Hill Cemetery after dark. While most encounters are not violent or hostile, the combination of floating lights, ghostly apparitions, and the sensation of being watched can be disorienting or unsettling. Visitors are encouraged to remain respectful, move quietly, and avoid lingering near the oldest monuments for prolonged periods. Many who do so leave with a sense of awe, a deep connection to the past, and an unforgettable awareness of the cemetery's otherworldly presence. Cedar Hill Cemetery in Connecticut remains one of the state's most haunting and mysterious locations. Its drifting lights in the fog, silent ghostly apparitions, and the pervasive feeling of being watched create a chilling, yet captivating experience. For those who venture along its paths after dark, Cedar Hill is more than a cemetery. It is a living reminder of history, memory, and spirits that refuse to fade, a place where the past continues to reach into the present and remind visitors that some presences never truly leave. Oak Hill Cemetery in Michigan sits quietly on a gently sloping hill, surrounded by thick stands of oak and maple trees that sway with the seasons. Established in the early 1800s, the cemetery holds the graves of early settlers, veterans of multiple wars, and generations of local townsfolk whose lives shaped the surrounding community. By day, Oak Hill is a tranquil place, with sun streaming through the branches, birdsong echoing among gravestones, and the occasional deer wandering the grounds. Yet as dusk descends and shadows lengthen, the cemetery takes on a far more sinister character. Visitors and locals alike report chilling experiences. Cold drafts that sweep across open fields, shadowy shapes that dart among the trees, whispers that seem to emanate from nowhere, and apparitions of long-dead townsfolk who appear to move through the mist. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at Oak Hill Cemetery involves sudden, unexplained cold drafts. Witnesses describe walking along the gravel paths or grassy slopes on calm evenings, only to be hit by a wave of icy air that seems entirely localized. These drafts often come without warning, sometimes surrounding a single gravestone or moving along a row of monuments as though tracing an unseen path. Those who experience them often report goosebumps, shivers that run down the spine, and a heavy, oppressive feeling that seems to press down on the shoulders and chest. Some speculate that these drafts are residual energy from the lives of those buried here, echoes of long-past sorrow and tragedy that refuse to dissipate. In addition to the chilling drafts, shadowy shapes are frequently reported moving among the trees and gravestones. Visitors often describe humanoid forms, dark and indistinct, appearing between oaks or near older monuments. These shapes are fleeting, often vanishing when approached, leaving behind only the sense that they were present. Some observers report that the figures seem purposeful, gliding along paths or pausing near specific graves, while others appear to simply drift aimlessly through the cemetery. The effect is disorienting, as the shapes often seem to move in peripheral vision, disappearing when looked at directly. Dogs and pets accompanying visitors have been known to grow uneasy, barking or whining at nothing visible, suggesting that the shadowy figures are sensed even by animals. Perhaps the most unnerving experiences at Oak Hill Cemetery involve unexplained whispers that seem to emanate from the trees. Visitors have reported hearing faint murmurs, names being called, or the sound of a conversation just beyond comprehension. The whispers are often subtle at first, barely audible above the rustle of leaves, but they can quickly grow in intensity, surrounding the listener from all directions. Many who hear them describe an almost hypnotic quality, as if the sounds are tugging at the mind, coaxing attention toward specific monuments or areas of the cemetery. Attempts to locate the source often fail, with no living creature in sight, adding to the impression that the voices are of spectral origin. Oak Hill Cemetery is also known for more tangible apparitions of long-dead townsfolk. Visitors frequently recount seeing figures dressed in period clothing, moving slowly along the cemetery paths or standing silently near gravestones. Some apparitions resemble men in worn suits or women in long dresses. Their faces pale and indistinct, yet their posture and movement suggests life and awareness. Others are more ethereal, fading in and out of visibility as if the very air itself refuses to hold them in form. Witnesses often report a strong emotional impact during these encounters, a sense of sorrow, longing, or even fleeting familiarity, as though the spirits are connected to the living in ways that transcend time. One memorable account comes from a local resident who ventured into Oak Hill Cemetery on a foggy autumn night. Walking past a row of moss-covered headstones, he felt a sudden cold draft pass over him, and his breath misted in the air, despite the mild evening temperature. Glancing to his left, he noticed a shadowy figure standing near an old oak, watching silently. As he approached, he heard soft whispers carried on the wind, unintelligible but unmistakably deliberate. Before he could react, the figure vanished into the fog, leaving only the sound of his own footsteps echoing in the stillness. The combination of chill, shadow, and whisper left him shaken. Yet he returned several nights later, compelled to explore further, and reported similar experiences each time. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Oak Hill Cemetery, intrigued by its reputation and the consistency of eyewitness reports. Using night vision cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field meters, they have captured shadowy figures on video, faint whispers, and spikes in EMF readings, particularly near the oldest graves and oak groves. While skeptics suggest that some of these phenomena can be attributed to wind, animals, or the human mind, the sheer volume and similarity of reports over decades suggest that Oak Hill holds mysteries beyond conventional explanation. The history of Oak Hill Cemetery may help explain the persistence of these phenomena. Many of the oldest graves belong to early settlers who lived harsh lives, dying from accidents, illness, or other tragic circumstances. The cemetery also contains monuments to veterans of wars past, whose memories linger in the landscape. The ancient oaks and dense undergrowth may act as conduits for residual energy, creating an environment where the living can sense echoes of the dead. Paranormal enthusiasts often suggest that the shadows, whispers, and apparitions are manifestations of both history and emotion, preserved in the very air and earth of the cemetery. Locals advise caution when visiting Oak Hill Cemetery, particularly at night. While the spirits and phenomena are generally not aggressive, the intensity of cold drafts, shadowy shapes, and whispers can be disorienting or unsettling. Visitors are encouraged to move quietly, respect the gravestones, and avoid lingering in areas where the apparitions are most frequently reported. Many who do so leave with a sense of awe, a connection to history, and an unforgettable encounter with the supernatural presence that permeates the cemetery. Oak Hill Cemetery in Michigan remains a place of mystery and haunting intrigue. Its cold drafts, shadowy figures, unexplained whispers, and apparitions of long-dead townsfolk create an experience that captivates and unnerves in equal measure. For those who walk its fog-laden paths after dark, Oak Hill is more than a cemetery. It is a bridge between past and present, a place where memory, history, and spirit converge, leaving an indelible impression on all who enter. Riverside Memorial in Iowa is a quiet, sprawling cemetery nestled along the winding banks of a slow-moving river. Established in the mid-1800s, it has long served as the resting place for generations of local families, veterans, and townsfolk whose lives helped shape the surrounding area. By day, the cemetery is serene, with sunlight reflecting off the water, trees lining the riverbank, and the gentle sound of the current weaving through the grounds. Birds call from the branches, and the air carries a peaceful calm. Yet, as evening falls, Riverside Memorial takes on an entirely different character. Locals and visitors alike report a series of unexplained phenomena. Phantom figures walking along the riverbanks near graves, flickering lights that appear and vanish without source, and strange sounds of laughter echoing through the night. These accounts have earned Riverside Memorial a reputation as one of Iowa's most haunted cemeteries. One of the most frequently reported occurrences involves phantom figures seen moving along the riverbanks. Witnesses describe humanoid shapes gliding silently between the gravestones and along the water's edge, often partially obscured by fog or shadows. These figures appear dressed in period clothing, their features indistinct yet suggestive of life. Some are said to wander as though searching for someone, while others appear to pause beside particular graves before vanishing suddenly. Those who have observed the figures often feel a profound mix of curiosity and fear, as though the spirits are aware of their presence and are silently observing in return. The movement of these phantoms is unnervingly smooth, almost ethereal, giving the impression that they are not bound by the natural laws of the living world. Flickering lights are another common feature of Riverside Memorial's haunting. Visitors report small, glowing orbs that drift along pathways or float above the river. These lights appear to defy explanation, sometimes moving against the wind or changing direction abruptly. They are often described as bluish-white, occasionally reddish, and always unnervingly bright against the night. Some locals believe the lights may represent the spirits of those buried near the river, attempting to guide the living or mark sacred spaces. Others speculate that they could be residual energy from the cemetery's long history, replaying moments of grief, ceremony, or tragedy. Regardless of their origin, the lights leave a lasting impression, casting eerie glows across the fog-draped gravestones and reflecting off the surface of the river in unnatural ways. Perhaps the most unsettling reports involve strange sounds of laughter echoing through the cemetery at night. Witnesses recount hearing high-pitched, sometimes childlike laughter, as well as deeper, more hollow chuckles that seem to emanate from the darkness. The sounds are often unpredictable, appearing near graves along the riverbank or among the trees, and vanish as quickly as they arrive. Some visitors report a sense of unease that accompanies the laughter, a feeling that they are being watched or followed. Even when the source cannot be seen, the laughter is often accompanied by other sensory phenomena, such as sudden chills, the rustle of unseen movements, or the faint smell of flowers or smoke that has no clear source. One particularly memorable account comes from a couple visiting Riverside Memorial on a foggy summer night. They had walked along a path near the river when they noticed a faint figure moving near an old gravestone. As they approached, the figure turned slightly, revealing the outline of a man in early 20th century clothing, then vanished into the mist. Moments later, they saw a small bluish-white light flicker above the water, moving toward the path before disappearing. Then came the soft laughter, echoing across the riverbank. The couple reported an immediate chill and a feeling of being observed from all directions, a sensation that persisted for several minutes even after they left the cemetery. The combination of figure, light, and laughter left them shaken, yet fascinated, compelled to return again despite the fear they had felt. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Riverside Memorial to document these unusual occurrences. Using night vision cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field meters, they have captured glimpses of shadowy figures, flickering lights, and unexplained sounds. EMF readings often spike near the riverbanks and older sections of the cemetery, suggesting a concentration of energy that correlates with eyewitness reports. Audio devices have picked up faint laughter and murmurs that have no identifiable source, while skeptics point to environmental factors, imagination, or wildlife as explanations. The consistency of sightings over decades suggests that there may be something more to the stories of Riverside Memorial. The history of Riverside Memorial provides context for many of these phenomena. The cemetery has been the site of numerous tragic events over the years, from drownings in the nearby river to fatal accidents and illnesses that claimed entire families. Many graves along the water's edge belong to these individuals, and local legend suggests that their spirits linger near the place of their passing. The combination of natural fog from the river, the open terrain, and dense groves of trees creates ideal conditions for both optical illusions and what some believe are manifestations of lingering energy. The cemetery's history of grief and remembrance may amplify the sense of presence, making the supernatural experiences particularly vivid. Locals caution those who visit Riverside Memorial at night to exercise respect and awareness. While most encounters are not threatening, the combination of phantom figures, flickering lights, and echoing laughter can be deeply unsettling. Visitors are advised to remain calm, move quietly, and avoid lingering in areas where activity is most frequently reported. Many who follow these precautions leave the cemetery with a profound sense of awe, a heightened connection to the past, and an unforgettable memory of the strange occurrences that define Riverside Memorial. Riverside Memorial in Iowa remains one of the most enigmatic and haunted cemeteries in the region. Its phantom figures along the riverbanks, flickering lights in the mist, and echoes of laughter create a chilling yet compelling experience for those who venture into the grounds after dark. For visitors, Riverside Memorial is not merely a resting place for the departed. It is a space where history, memory, and the supernatural converge, offering glimpses into a world where the past continues to reach into the present and the spirits of the lost remain ever near. Woodlawn Cemetery in Illinois is an expansive, historic burial ground, tucked away amid gently rolling hills and shaded by towering oaks and maples. Established in the 19th century, it has long served as the resting place for generations of local families, veterans, and prominent community members. By day, the cemetery is peaceful, with sunlight filtering through branches, the soft rustle of leaves, and the occasional chirp of birds, creating a serene atmosphere. Gravestones and monuments, some weathered by time, line meandering paths, offering visitors a reflective experience among the memories of those who have passed. However, as night descends and shadows lengthen, Woodlawn Cemetery transforms into a place steeped in mystery and supernatural activity. Witnesses recount ghostly children playing hide-and-seek, shadowy figures appearing at the entrances of mausoleums, and lights flickering inexplicably above tombstones. These eerie occurrences have given Woodlawn a reputation as one of Illinois' most haunted cemeteries. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at Woodlawn Cemetery involves ghostly children. Visitors often describe seeing small figures darting between graves or disappearing behind monuments, playing as if unaware of the living world. Many report the feeling of being watched or followed by these children, their presence playful yet slightly unsettling. Some have heard faint laughter or the sound of footsteps on gravel paths where no one else is visible. Others report glimpsing their children in the corner of their vision, only to turn and find empty spaces where they had been. Witnesses often feel a mixture of warmth and unease, as though these spirits are replaying moments of joy or innocence long past, tethered to the cemetery by the memories of untimely deaths or unfinished lives. Shadowy figures are another frequent occurrence, often appearing at the entrances of mausoleums. Witnesses describe tall, dark forms standing silently in doorways or gliding along the cemetery paths, their features indistinct and obscured by shadow. These figures are reported to move with purpose, sometimes approaching visitors or following them from a distance, only to vanish suddenly when observed directly. Many who have encountered these figures report an overwhelming sensation of being watched or studied, a sense of presence that can be both unnerving and immersive. Dogs accompanying visitors sometimes react to these figures, barking or refusing to enter certain areas, suggesting that even animals sense the unnatural activity in these spots. Lights flickering above tombstones are another hallmark of Woodlawn Cemetery's haunting. Witnesses often report small orbs or streaks of light hovering over graves, moving in ways that defy natural explanation. The lights may appear suddenly and vanish just as quickly, or they may flicker intermittently, creating an eerie and otherworldly effect across the gravestones. Some describe the lights as white or bluish in color, while others report amber or reddish hues, often corresponding to the age or significance of the graves beneath them. Many speculate that these lights are manifestations of spirits lingering near their resting places, trying to communicate or mark areas of significance. Regardless of their origin, the flickering lights contribute to a pervasive sense of mystery and the supernatural that defines the cemetery at night. One particularly memorable encounter occurred when a local historian, visited Woodlawn Cemetery late in the evening to photograph the older monuments. Walking along a path near a row of mausoleums, he noticed a faint movement in the distance. A group of small figures appeared to be playing among the gravestones, laughing quietly, as if engaged in a game of hide-and-seek. As he approached, one figure glanced toward him and vanished into the shadows. Moments later, a dark silhouette emerged from a mausoleum entrance, watching silently before fading into the night. He also observed small flickering lights hovering above several tombstones, moving in a slow, deliberate pattern. The combination of ghostly children, shadowed forms, and floating lights left him both awed and unsettled, a vivid testament to the haunting presence that permeates Woodlawn Cemetery. Paranormal investigators have often been drawn to Woodlawn Cemetery to document these phenomena, using night vision cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field meters. They have captured images of shadowy figures moving through mausoleum entrances and along paths. Audio equipment sometimes records laughter, whispering voices, and faint footsteps that cannot be attributed to environmental factors or human activity. EMF readings often spike near older tombstones and mausoleums, suggesting a concentration of unexplained energy in these areas. While skeptics argue that fog, reflections, or imagination may account for some experiences, the consistency of reports over decades points to a deeper, unresolved mystery. The history of Woodlawn Cemetery offers context for many of these reported phenomena. The mausoleums were built to honor prominent families, many of whom experienced hardship or early deaths, possibly accounting for the shadowed figures seen near their entrances. The grounds themselves, with dense foliage, rolling terrain, and open spaces, create an atmosphere that both amplifies natural phenomena and encourages an eerie psychological response. Paranormal enthusiasts often interpret these conditions as a combination of emotional energy, residual memory, and spiritual presence that gives rise to the haunting experiences described at Woodlawn. Locals advise caution for anyone visiting Woodlawn Cemetery at night. While most encounters are not overtly hostile, the combination of ghostly children, shadowy figures, and flickering lights can be disorienting and unnerving. Visitors are encouraged to walk quietly, remain aware of their surroundings, and avoid lingering in areas where activity is most frequently reported. Those who do respect the cemetery often report a sense of awe, a heightened awareness of history, and an unforgettable connection to the past. Woodlawn Cemetery in Illinois remains a site of intrigue, history, and supernatural mystery. The ghostly children playing among gravestones, shadowy figures near mausoleum entrances, and flickering lights above tombstones create an experience that captivates and unsettles in equal measure. For those who venture through its paths after dark, Woodlawn Cemetery is more than a resting place. It is a space where memory, history, and lingering spirits converge, leaving visitors with the enduring sense that the past never truly disappears. Mount Hope Cemetery in Ohio is a sprawling, historic burial ground, quietly resting atop a gentle hill and surrounded by towering oaks, maples, and scattered evergreens. Established in the 1800s, it is the final resting place for generations of local residents, prominent families, and veterans of multiple wars. The cemetery carries a deep sense of history, with gravestones and monuments ranging from simple markers to elaborate sculptures, each telling a story of lives lived long ago. By day, the grounds are serene, with sunlight filtering through the trees, birdsong echoing across the lawns, and the soft murmur of the nearby river adding to the sense of peace. Yet, as night descends, Mount Hope Cemetery transforms into a realm where the past seems to brush against the present, and visitors report experiences that defy explanation. Witnesses describe shadowy nurses tending graves, voices calling names with no visible source, and figures vanishing into the creeping fog that often blankets the grounds. Much of the haunting at Mount Hope Cemetery is attributed to its history with past epidemics. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, the area was struck by outbreaks of disease that claimed many lives in a short period, leaving families grieving and communities shaken. Some of the oldest graves bear markers for multiple members of a family, often children, whose deaths occurred within months of one another. Locals believe that the spirits of those who perished in these epidemics linger in the cemetery, replaying fragments of their final moments or tending to the places where they were buried. Witnesses often describe shadowy figures dressed in period nursing attire, moving slowly along rows of graves as though offering care or guidance to the deceased. These apparitions are typically fleeting, disappearing when approached, but their presence leaves an indelible impression on those who see them. Visitors to Mount Hope Cemetery also report hearing unexplained voices calling names through the night air. These sounds are often soft, carried on the wind, and can seem to come from multiple directions at once. The voices may repeat a single name, as though searching for a lost loved one, or murmur fragments of sentences that are just beyond comprehension. Many who hear these voices describe a sudden sense of being watched, an almost tangible awareness that unseen eyes are upon them. Some people report an overwhelming mix of fear and sorrow, as if the voices carry the weight of decades of grief and loss. Attempts to locate the source usually fail, with the sounds seeming to vanish or shift as the listener moves through the grounds. Fog plays a central role in the haunting atmosphere at Mount Hope Cemetery. On many nights, particularly in the fall and early spring, the cemetery is shrouded in low-hanging mist that rolls in from nearby rivers and lowlands. Within this fog, figures are often seen moving in the distance, appearing for a moment before dissolving into the vapor. Witnesses report shadowy shapes gliding across paths, vanishing at the edge of their vision, and appearing in places where no person could realistically be. This fog, combined with the cold drafts that sweep along the hill, creates a disorienting environment where the line between the natural and supernatural seems blurred. The interplay of shadow and mist amplifies the sense that Mount Hope is alive with unseen presence. A landscape where the dead continue to interact with the living in subtle, mysterious ways. One particularly striking account comes from a local historian who visited Mount Hope Cemetery on a misty autumn evening. While documenting old family plots, she noticed a faint glow near one of the larger monuments. As she approached, a figure in a nursing uniform emerged from the fog, moving slowly along the row of graves. The historian felt an immediate chill, and the sound of soft, distant voices calling names surrounded her from all directions. The figure paused near a headstone, and for a brief moment, it seemed to look directly at her, before vanishing entirely into the mist. The voices continued to echo for several minutes, fading gradually as the fog shifted. The experience left her shaken, yet compelled her to return on multiple nights, each visit revealing similar phenomena, glimpses of figures, whispers, and the eerie presence of history made manifest. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Mount Hope Cemetery, intrigued by the frequency and consistency of reports. Using night vision cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field meters, they have captured shadowy figures, unexplained voices, and temperature fluctuations corresponding to the locations of apparitions. EMF spikes often occur near older graves or mausoleums, suggesting the presence of lingering energy. Audio recordings occasionally capture faint murmurs or name-calling that cannot be traced to wind, animals, or human activity, while skeptics point to natural explanations such as fog, acoustics, and imagination. The repetition of reports and their alignment with historical tragedies at Mount Hope suggest a deeper, unexplainable element at play. The history of Mount Hope Cemetery is inseparable from its reputation for haunting. Many graves mark victims of epidemics, whose sudden deaths left profound sorrow behind. Veterans, prominent citizens, and families who lost multiple members are also buried here, each contributing to the energy that witnesses often perceive. The combination of fog, old trees, monuments, and the emotional weight of tragedy creates an environment in which supernatural experiences are intensified, whether as residual energy, apparitions, or psychic impressions of the past. Locals advise caution for those exploring Mount Hope Cemetery at night. The spirits and phenomena are rarely hostile, but the intensity of cold drafts, shadowy figures, and disembodied voices can be overwhelming. Visitors are encouraged to move quietly, respect the gravestones, and avoid lingering in fog-heavy areas for long periods. Those who do so often leave with a sense of awe, a connection to the past, and a haunting awareness of the lives and stories that continue to inhabit the cemetery. Mount Hope Cemetery in Ohio remains a haunting testament to history, memory, and lingering presence. Shadowy nurses tending graves, voices calling names from the fog, and figures that vanish as mysteriously as they appear create an experience that is both chilling and captivating. For those who venture into the misty paths after dark, Mount Hope Cemetery is more than a resting place for the dead. Is a bridge between past and present, a place where memory, grief, and spirits converge, leaving an indelible mark on all who enter. St. Joseph's Cemetery in Wisconsin is a sprawling, centuries-old resting place nestled on the outskirts of a quiet town, with its rows of weathered headstones, towering oaks, and ornate crypts. The cemetery carries a history that stretches back generations. Visitors often remark on the sense of solemnity and reverence that permeates the grounds. But beneath the calm surface, there exists a layer of mystery and the unexplained. For decades, locals have reported strange phenomena, experiences that suggest a cemetery is more than just a final resting place. It is a site where the veil between the living and the dead seems unusually thin. Apparitions are among the most frequently reported phenomena at St. Joseph's. Witnesses describe fleeting shadows moving between crypts, indistinct figures pausing near gravestones, and forms that appear fully human for a moment before dissolving into the air. These sightings are not limited to any single part of the cemetery. They have been reported along winding paths, near family plots, and within the older sections where the most elaborate crypts stand. Some visitors see figures dressed in old-fashioned clothing, while others report seeing more spectral, ethereal forms that seem to glow faintly in the moonlight. One of the most unsettling aspects of these apparitions is the sense of presence they carry. Observers often feel watched, a quiet awareness that someone or something is moving just beyond their vision. Shadowy priests walking the rows are another hallmark of St. Joseph's haunting. Locals recount seeing tall, robed figures gliding along the pathways between graves, sometimes stopping as if performing a ritual or saying a silent prayer. These figures are usually dark silhouettes, lacking discernible features, and they disappear when approached. Several witnesses have noted that the presence of these shadowy priests seems accompanied by a heavy, almost reverential air, as if the cemetery itself acknowledges the sanctity of their spectral movements. The priests are never threatening, yet their sudden appearances can be unnerving, particularly for those visiting alone, or during the late hours when the cemetery is silent and fog hangs low over the graves. Flickering candles appearing without a source add another layer of eerie. Visitors report seeing small flames dancing atop gravestones or near crypt entrances, often in clusters where no living person is present. The candles sometimes burn steadily for a few minutes before vanishing entirely, leaving no sign of melted wax or soot. In other cases, the flames appear to move, shifting from one headstone to another, as if guided by invisible hands. The sight of these candles often evokes both fear and curiosity, creating a surreal and almost sacred atmosphere. Locals often warn newcomers that these lights are signs of spirits paying tribute or reminding the living of their presence, and they caution against disturbing them. Auditory phenomena are also frequently reported. Visitors hear soft footsteps along gravel paths, even when they are the only ones in the cemetery. Some describe muffled whispers, indistinct voices carrying through the night air, or the faint sound of prayers spoken in a solemn tone. These sounds often accompany visual phenomena, creating a sense that the cemetery is alive in its own spectral way. The whispers, footsteps, and sudden chills leave an impression of a place that remembers the lives once lived there, echoing long after the people themselves have passed. Many accounts suggest a connection between the cemetery's long history and its paranormal activity. St. Joseph's dates back to a time when death was a constant companion in daily life, and the cemetery became the final resting place for multiple generations. The older crypts and headstones, carved with intricate designs and inscriptions, carry both the weight of grief and the memory of the community. Residents often speculate that the apparitions and lights are residual energy, lingering echoes of past rituals, prayers, and solemn ceremonies, replaying themselves for anyone sensitive enough to perceive them. Some visitors have experienced multiple phenomena in a single visit. One witness reported seeing a flickering candle near an ancient crypt, hearing faint footsteps approaching from behind, and then catching sight of a shadowy priest moving silently between graves. When they turned to investigate, the candle had vanished, the footsteps ceased, and the figure was gone, leaving only the heavy scent of damp earth and old stone. Such layered experiences are common at St. Joseph's, blending sight, sound, and sensation to create a haunting that is immersive and unforgettable. St. Joseph's Cemetery, with its old crypts, shadowy priests, and ghostly lights, remains a place where the past and present converge. Visitors continue to recount inexplicable experiences, and locals maintain that the spirits are a reminder of the lives that came before, watching, praying, and lingering in the quiet corners of the grounds. For those who walk its paths after dark, the cemetery is more than a resting place. It is a living memory, a realm where the echoes of the past persist in shadow, sound, and flickering light. Greenwood Memorial in New Jersey is a historic cemetery known for its sprawling grounds, ornate monuments, and a history that stretches back over a century. Nestled amid rolling hills and shaded by towering oaks and maples, the cemetery serves as the final resting place for generations of local families, veterans, and notable figures from the surrounding communities. By day, Greenwood Memorial is serene and contemplative. Sunlight filters through the branches, birdsong fills the air, and the rows of gravestones and mausoleums offer a quiet space for reflection. The grounds are meticulously maintained, with pathways winding past both modest markers and elaborate memorials, each bearing silent testimony to lives long past. Yet as night descends, the cemetery's calm atmosphere gives way to an eerie presence, one that many visitors and locals have described in chilling detail. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at Greenwood Memorial involves the appearance of figures in period clothing. Witnesses recount seeing men and women dressed in fashions from the 19th or early 20th century, walking among the gravestones or pausing near family plots. These figures are often seen at dusk or in the early evening, their movements deliberate and purposeful. Some appear to be mourning, while others seem to wander aimlessly, as though retracing familiar paths from a time long ago. When approached, the figures vanish suddenly, leaving no trace, though some observers report a lingering scent of perfume or tobacco in the air. The appearance of these spectral visitors gives the cemetery an unsettling sense of continuity between the past and the present, as though the memories of those buried here refuse to remain silent. Whispers carried on the wind are another hallmark of Greenwood Memorial's haunting. Visitors have reported faint voices calling names, snippets of conversation, or murmured prayers that seem to come from nowhere. The whispers often accompany sightings of the period-dressed figures, adding to the surreal atmosphere. Some describe the sounds as soft and distant, barely audible above the rustling leaves, while others claim they are clearer and more direct, echoing from different directions simultaneously. Many who hear these voices report a profound sense of unease, as though unseen presences are observing them or attempting to communicate. The effect is often disorienting, particularly for those unfamiliar with the cemetery's history, and can leave visitors with a lingering feeling of tension long after they leave the grounds. Cold spots are yet another frequently reported phenomenon at Greenwood Memorial. Witnesses describe sudden drops in temperature in specific areas, often near older graves, mausoleums, or along shaded pathways. The cold is typically localized, with one area icy to the touch, while the surrounding environment remains relatively warm. Some visitors report that these spots appear and disappear without warning, intensifying feelings of dread and alertness. The cold is sometimes accompanied by an oppressive sense of being watched, and many who encounter these phenomena experience an immediate urge to leave the area. The combination of cold spots, whispered voices, and spectral figures contributes to Greenwood Memorial's reputation as one of the most haunted cemeteries in New Jersey. One particularly memorable account comes from a couple who visited Greenwood Memorial on a foggy autumn evening. As they walked along a path lined with gravestones dating back over a century, they noticed a figure in a long, flowing dress standing near a large monument. The figure appeared to be looking down at the ground, its features obscured by shadows. As the couple approached, a sudden cold breeze enveloped them, and the figure vanished before they could get closer. At the same moment, they heard faint whispers carried on the wind, calling a name that neither of them recognized. The experience left them shaken, yet captivated, giving them a first-hand encounter with the spectral energy that defines Greenwood Memorial. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Greenwood Memorial, intrigued by the consistency and frequency of these reports. Using night vision cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field meters, they have documented unusual activity, including shadowy figures, unexplained voices, and temperature fluctuations. EMF readings often spike near older graves or mausoleums, suggesting a concentration of residual energy. Audio equipment occasionally picks up faint murmurs or whispered names that cannot be traced to wind, wildlife, or human activity. While skeptics attribute these phenomena to imagination, environmental conditions, or optical illusions, the consistency of witness reports over decades suggests that there is something inexplicable occurring at Greenwood Memorial. The history of the cemetery adds context to these reports. Many of the older graves belong to families who experienced loss due to disease, accidents, or sudden death, leaving behind a legacy of grief. The presence of period clothing in spectral sightings may reflect the lingering impressions of those who once walked the cemetery in life, while whispers and cold spots may be manifestations of emotional energy trapped within the grounds. The dense foliage, fog-prone landscape, and open terrain all create conditions conducive to both optical illusions and the perception of supernatural activity. Locals advise caution for those who visit Greenwood Memorial after dark. While most encounters are not hostile, the combination of figures, whispers, and sudden cold spots can be disorienting and emotionally intense. Visitors are encouraged to move quietly, respect the graves and monuments, and avoid lingering in areas where activity is frequently reported. Those who follow these precautions often leave with a profound sense of awe, a connection to the past, and an unforgettable memory of the experiences they witnessed. Greenwood Memorial in New Jersey remains a site of historical significance, eerie beauty, and supernatural intrigue. Figures in period clothing, whispers carried on the wind, and sudden cold spots create an experience that captivates and unnerves in equal measure. For those who venture into its grounds after dark, Greenwood Memorial is more than a cemetery. It is a place where history, memory, and lingering spirits converge, leaving a lasting impression on all who enter. Evergreen Cemetery in Maryland is a historic and expansive burial ground, nestled among rolling hills and matured trees that create a tranquil yet solemn atmosphere. Established in the 1800s, it serves as the final resting place for generations of local families, veterans, and prominent citizens, with gravestones ranging from simple markers to elaborate monuments and mausoleums. By day, Evergreen Cemetery is a place of quiet reflection, where sunlight filters through the branches, birds call from the treetops, and gentle pathways invite visitors to explore the history preserved within its grounds. Yet as evening falls and fog rolls in, the cemetery transforms into a realm where the living feel the presence of the past in startling and unexplainable ways. Witnesses have reported phantom horses and carriages, ghostly mourners at empty graves, and shadowy figures glimpsed through thick fog, creating an experience that is both haunting and unforgettable. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at Evergreen Cemetery is the appearance of phantom horses and carriages. Visitors often describe hearing the faint clip-clop of hooves or the creak of wagon wheels on gravel paths, only to find no horses or carriages in sight. On several occasions, Witnesses have seen spectral carriages slowly moving along the cemetery lanes, sometimes appearing as fully formed vehicles with indistinct drivers and passengers, other times as fleeting shadows barely discernible through the fog. The phenomenon is often accompanied by a sudden chill, and observers frequently report an overwhelming sense of being watched or followed. Many believe these apparitions are echoes of funerals from the 19th century, when horse-drawn carriages were commonly used to transport the deceased to their final resting places. Ghostly mourners are another consistent aspect of the haunting at Evergreen Cemetery. Figures dressed in period clothing are seen standing or walking near graves, sometimes appearing to weep, pause in prayer, or gaze solemnly at headstones. These apparitions are often silent, yet their presence conveys an unmistakable sense of grief and loss. Witnesses have described seeing women in long dresses and bonnets, men in dark coats and hats, and children holding onto their parents' hands. The figures often vanish when approached, leaving behind an empty grave and a lingering sensation that the spirits of the deceased and their mourners are replaying the rituals of a time long past. Many visitors note that these sightings are most frequent near older graves or family plots where multiple generations are buried together, suggesting that the energy of sorrow and remembrance has left an imprint on the cemetery grounds. Thick fog plays a critical role in the cemetery's eerie ambience and supernatural reports. On foggy nights, shadowy figures are often glimpsed at the edge of visibility, moving silently between gravestones or across open lawns. The fog obscures details, making it difficult to determine the size, shape, or nature of the figures, which enhances the sense of mystery and unease. Some witnesses report feeling as though they are being followed, or that the fog itself has a consciousness, parting to reveal shapes before swallowing them again. The combination of fog, dim lighting, and natural shadows creates a perfect environment for encounters that feel both spectral and tangible, leaving visitors questioning what they saw and what might have been imagined. One particularly memorable encounter occurred when a local historian visited Evergreen Cemetery on a damp autumn evening. While walking among the older sections, he heard the distant sound of hooves striking gravel and the creaking of wooden wheels. He turned to see a spectral carriage slowly moving along a main path, its occupants shadowed and indistinct. As he watched, a group of mourners in period clothing appeared near a nearby family plot, standing silently by an empty grave. The historian noted the fog growing denser, and as he stepped closer, both the carriage and the mourners vanished completely, leaving only the cold, damp air and a profound sense of being connected to the past. He described the experience as both unsettling and humbling, a vivid reminder of the cemetery's layered history and the lingering presence of those who came before. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Evergreen Cemetery, intrigued by the consistency and detail of eyewitness accounts. Using night vision cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field meters, they have documented shadowy figures, unexplained lights, and phantom sounds corresponding to historical funeral practices. EMF readings often spike near older family plots, suggesting residual energy tied to intense emotional events, such as mourning or grief. Audio equipment occasionally captures faint whispers, the sound of footsteps, or horse hooves, even in areas with no human activity. While skeptics argue that fog, lighting, and psychological expectation may account for some experiences, the consistency of reports over decades points to a phenomenon that is more complex than simple imagination. The cemetery's history provides context for these haunting occurrences. Evergreen Cemetery contains the graves of families who experienced multiple tragedies, including deaths from epidemics, accidents, and wars. Funerals in the 19th century would have involved horse-drawn carriages and elaborate mourning rituals, leaving behind both physical and emotional imprints on the landscape. Many researchers suggest that the apparitions, sounds, and cold spots reported by visitors are manifestations of residual energy, replaying moments of sorrow, grief, or solemn ritual. Locals advise caution for those who explore Evergreen Cemetery at night. The experiences, while not physically harmful, can be emotionally intense and disorienting. Visitors are encouraged to move carefully, respect the graves and monuments, and avoid lingering in dense fog or areas where spectral activity is most frequently reported. Those who approach the cemetery with quiet observation and respect often leave with a profound sense of history, awe, and an unforgettable encounter with the paranormal. Evergreen Cemetery in Maryland remains a site of historical significance and supernatural intrigue. Phantom horses and carriages, ghostly mourners at empty graves, and shadowy figures glimpsed through thick fog create an experience that captivates, chills, and leaves a lasting impression. For those who venture into its paths after dark, Evergreen Cemetery is more than a resting place, is a living testament to memory, mourning, and the lingering presence of the past. Rose Hill Cemetery in Tennessee is a historic and solemn burial ground, quietly resting atop rolling hills and shaded by ancient oaks and maples. Established in the early 19th century, it serves as the final resting place for generations of local families, Civil War veterans, and townsfolk who shaped the surrounding communities. By day, the cemetery exudes a peaceful atmosphere. Sunlight dapples through the branches. Birds call across the lawns, and the gravestones and monuments stand as quiet testaments to lives long past. The paths wind among marble headstones, iron fences, and weathered mausoleums, each marking a story of love, loss, and remembrance. Yet when night falls, Rose Hill Cemetery transforms into a place where the past seems to brush against the present, and visitors report experiences that defy explanation. Soldier apparitions, figures moving silently among graves, and sudden cold, eerie winds create a haunting environment that draws the curious and unsettles even the most skeptical. Much of Rose Hill Cemetery's supernatural reputation stems from its history during the Civil War. The region was heavily involved in the conflict, with local men enlisting and battles fought nearby. Many of those who died were laid to rest within the cemetery, sometimes in mass graves or in simple markers that now blend into the landscape. Locals report seeing ghostly soldiers dressed in period uniforms, appearing along pathways or standing silently at the edges of family plots. Witnesses describe the soldiers as moving with purpose, often pausing as if keeping watch, only to vanish when approached. Some accounts mention the faint sounds of marching, distant gunfire, or the clink of metal, further suggesting a lingering connection to past conflict. These apparitions are typically seen during the late evening or early hours before dawn, when the cemetery is shrouded in darkness and mist. Figures walking silently among the graves are another common experience reported at Rose Hill. Visitors describe seeing shadowy forms gliding along the pathways, moving between tombstones as if retracing steps from decades ago. Some appear as townsfolk in period clothing, while others are more indistinct, resembling human shapes without clear features. Witnesses often feel an unshakable sense of being watched or followed, even when the figures disappear from sight. Dogs and other animals accompanying visitors sometimes react nervously, barking or refusing to advance into areas where the apparitions are most frequently observed. These silent figures give the impression that the cemetery is alive with memory and energy, a place where the living and the dead coexist in subtle, sometimes unsettling ways. Cold, eerie winds add another layer to the haunting at Rose Hill Cemetery. Many visitors report sudden drops in temperature as they walk along certain paths or approach older graves, with the chill seeming to concentrate in specific areas while the surrounding environment remains relatively warm. These gusts often accompany sightings of apparitions or unexplained movement, and they can appear to circle, drift, or vanish without warning. Some describe the wind as carrying faint whispers, distant calls, or the rustle of clothing from unseen figures. The combination of temperature changes and subtle auditory phenomena contributes to a sense of unease and makes encounters at Rose Hill both memorable and chilling. One particularly vivid account comes from a local historian who visited Rose Hill Cemetery on a fog-laden autumn evening. As he explored the older sections, he noticed the shadow of a soldier standing at the edge of a family plot, his outline sharp against a thick mist. The historian felt a sudden drop in temperature and heard a faint rustling, as though someone was walking nearby. As he moved closer, the figure vanished entirely, leaving only the whisper of wind and the quiet weight of history. Moments later, he observed another shadow moving along a distant path, disappearing again, as if the cemetery itself was shifting in response to his presence. The experience left him shaken, yet deeply aware of the lingering past embedded in the cemetery grounds. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Rose Hill Cemetery, intrigued by the consistency and detail of eyewitness reports. Using night vision cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field meters, they have documented shadowy figures, unexplained sounds, and sudden temperature fluctuations. EMF readings often spike near older graves or mausoleums, suggesting concentrated residual energy. Audio recordings occasionally capture distant footsteps, murmurs, or sounds reminiscent of soldiers marching, even when no human presence is detected. While skeptics argue that fog, imagination, or environmental conditions may explain some phenomena, the repeated and detailed reports over decades indicate that something more profound may be occurring. The history of Rose Hill Cemetery provides context for these experiences. Many graves mark victims of war, disease, and early town tragedies, leaving behind emotional energy that some believe lingers on the grounds. The combination of mist-prone terrain, dense tree coverage, and the historical significance of the cemetery creates conditions where apparitions, cold spots, and unexplained sounds are most frequently reported. Paranormal enthusiasts suggest that the ghostly soldiers and silent figures may represent residual energy, replaying moments of grief, vigilance, or mourning from past generations. Locals advise caution for those exploring Rose Hill Cemetery after dark. While the phenomena are generally non-aggressive, the combination of apparitions, sudden cold, and the psychological impact of witnessing these experiences can be overwhelming. Visitors are encouraged to walk respectfully, avoid disturbing graves or monuments, and limit time spent in fog-heavy areas where activity is concentrated. Those who do so often leave with a profound sense of awe, a deeper connection to the past, and an enduring memory of the supernatural presence that lingers among the graves. Rose Hill Cemetery in Tennessee remains a place where history, memory, and the supernatural intersect. Soldier apparitions, figures walking silently among graves, and sudden cold, eerie winds create a haunting yet captivating experience. For those who venture into its grounds after dark, Rose Hill Cemetery is more than a resting place. It is a space where the past lives on, where memory and grief linger, and where the line between the living and the dead seems to blur in the quiet of the night. Hillside Cemetery in Vermont rests quietly at the edge of a small town, surrounded by rolling hills and whispering pines that seem to guard its secrets. On most days, it appears peaceful, a place of rest and remembrance. But as twilight falls and fog begins to creep between the gravestones, a different side of the cemetery emerges. Visitors and locals alike have reported eerie sights and sounds that defy explanation. Ghostly children darting through tombstones, cloaked figures moving silently in the darkness, and mysterious lights that flicker, only to vanish when anyone draws near. For generations, Hillside Cemetery has been a place of local legend. Built in the early 1800s, it became the resting place for farmers, soldiers, and families who helped shape the town's early history. Yet along with those who found peace came rumors of spirits who never truly left. Residents often speak of the hillside children, spectral figures said to appear around dusk. Witnesses describe them as small, translucent forms, running and laughing among the graves, their voices echoing faintly through the still night air. One man, a caretaker who has worked at Hillside for over 20 years, told of an evening when he stayed late to repair a broken fence. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he heard the unmistakable sound of children playing, soft giggles and quick footsteps moving behind him. Thinking perhaps local kids had wandered in, he turned with his flashlight, ready to shoo them away. But when the beam swept across the gravestones, there was no one there, only the lingering sound of laughter fading into silence. The following morning, he found small footprints in the damp grass, footprints that led directly toward a row of old, weather-worn headstones belonging to children who had died over a century ago. Other visitors have encountered shadowy figures cloaked in darkness, often seen near the older section of the cemetery where the trees grow thickest. These figures appear briefly standing, motionless, between graves or gliding along the pathways before melting into the shadows. Some describe them as mourners from another era, perhaps lingering souls who cannot accept their own passing. Others believe they are guardians, protectors of the dead, silently watching those who enter after dark. The mysterious lights of Hillside Cemetery add another layer to its unsettling reputation. They often appear as faint orbs, blue, white, or pale green, floating low to the ground or hovering above the tombstones. Witnesses claim the lights seem almost intelligent, flickering as if responding to movement. When approached, they dart away, vanishing in an instant. Paranormal investigators who have visited the cemetery with cameras and EMF detectors have captured unusual readings near these light sightings, though none have been able to determine their source. Some attribute them to natural phenomena like swamp gas or reflected headlights. But those who have seen them up close insist they move with purpose, not randomness. Many locals avoid the cemetery at night, but those who dare to visit often leave with stories they struggle to explain. A young couple once reported stopping near Hillside to stargaze, only to see what they thought was a child standing between two gravestones. The figure turned toward them, its features obscured by shadow, and then simply dissolved into thin air. Another witness described seeing a lantern light moving along the cemetery's central path late one night, swaying gently as if carried by an unseen hand. When he approached, the light blinked out, leaving nothing but the sound of wind rustling through dry leaves. Psychic mediums who have toured the grounds speak of a heavy energy within Hillside, an emotional residue tied to sorrow, loss, and longing. Some believe that ghostly children are spirits who died young and now play where they were buried, unaware of their fate. The cloaked figures, they suggest, might be older souls, bound to the cemetery by grief or duty. Skeptics, however, argue that suggestion and imagination play powerful roles in these sightings. They point out that old cemeteries often evoke unease, especially under the shifting light of dusk. Still, even the most rational minds struggle to dismiss the strange lights and unexplained sounds that have been witnessed by so many. Seasonal workers who maintain the grounds have their own unsettling experiences. Tools misplaced overnight appear neatly arranged the next morning. Fences that fall in storms seem mysteriously repaired. One groundskeeper swears that on certain misty mornings, faint outlines of figures can be seen walking among the graves, only to vanish when the fog clears. Despite its eerie reputation, Hillside Cemetery retains a strange beauty. The marble stones glisten with dew at dawn, and the surrounding forest hums with life. Yet, beneath that calm exterior lies a feeling that something unseen lingers, in awareness that visitors can't shake. Whether the cemetery's phenomena are remnants of restless spirits or the product of imagination, no one can say for certain. To this day, locals advise those who pass by at night not to stop, especially when the fog is thick and the air feels colder than it should. For those who do linger, the whisper of laughter or the fleeting glow between the stones might serve as a reminder that some parts of Hillside Cemetery are still very much alive with the echoes of the past. ChatGPT said, Forest Lawn Cemetery in Ohio is a place of quiet beauty, by day a sprawling landscape of manicured lawns, towering oaks, and rows of weathered tombstones that glisten under morning dew. But when the sun dips below the horizon and the air grows still, the peace that defines this cemetery seems to twist into something far colder. For decades, visitors have spoken of strange encounters within its gates. Apparitions of grieving widows wandering the paths, the echo of footsteps following in the dark, and shadowy figures that seem to move between the trees when no living soul should be there. Located on the outskirts of Cleveland, Forest Lawn was established in the late 1800s, during a period when cemeteries were designed not only as resting places for the dead, but also as tranquil parks for the living. Families would come here to picnic among the headstones and reflect beside the small ponds. But as years passed, the grounds became less about the living and more about the memories buried beneath. Over time, stories began to emerge, stories that turned this one-side-licked sanctuary into one of Ohio's most quietly haunted places. The most enduring legend centers on a figure known locally as the widow of Forest Lawn. She is said to appear late at night, dressed in a long black veil and lace gloves, her face hidden, as she drifts among the older gravestones. Witnesses say she walks with slow, deliberate steps, clutching a bouquet of wilted flowers. Some claim she pauses at a particular grave, one belonging to a man named Thomas Barrett, who died in 1912, and kneels, as though lost in eternal mourning. A few brave souls who have dared to approach her describe the air turning icy cold, the scent of roses lingering briefly before she fades into the fog. One groundskeeper, who worked at Forest Lawn for nearly 3 decades, shared a chilling account of his own. He was making a late-night check of the cemetery after reports of trespassers. As he walked down the main path, he saw a woman in black standing beneath a willow tree. Thinking she was a mourner who had stayed too long, he called out to her. She didn't move. He shined his flashlight toward hand. In that instant, she simply vanished, leaving behind only the faint rustle of the willow branches and a lingering chill that raised every hair on his arms. But the widow isn't the only spirit said to roam Forest Lawn. Many visitors report hearing footsteps echoing along the gravel paths, as if someone is following them just out of sight. Sometimes the footsteps match their pace, quickening when they walk faster, slowing when they stop. Others describe the sound of someone weeping softly among the graves, only for it to stop the moment they try to locate its source. One couple, visiting in early autumn, told of an experience that left them shaken. They had come in the late afternoon to photograph the old mausoleums and the fading light through the trees. As dusk fell, they started back toward their car, but both heard a distinct sound of footsteps crunching the leaves behind them. They turned, no one was there. They continued walking, and again, the sound followed. When they reached the gate, they looked back and saw what they described as a shadowy figure standing beneath an oak, completely still. They watched for several seconds before it dissolved into the darkness. Those who venture into the wooded sections of the cemetery report even stranger phenomena. There are claims of shapes moving between trees, sometimes appearing as tall, dark silhouettes, other times as flashes of pale mist. Paranormal investigators who have explored Forest Lawn say the wooded areas are the most active, with sudden temperature drops, strange energy readings, and disembodied whispers captured on their recorders. One team reported hearing what sounded like a woman humming a lullaby near the pond at midnight, even though their cameras and thermal sensors detected no one nearby. Some believe the spirits that linger here are bound by grief. Forest Lawn's archives revealed that a number of tragic events took place nearby. A smallpox outbreak in the early 1900s that claimed several families, a fire that destroyed a caretaker's home in the 1930s, and a devastating accident involving a collapsed mausoleum wall that killed 2 workers in the 1940s. Locals say that tragedy leaves a residue, and perhaps the grief of those who mourned in life continues long after death. One recurring phenomenon reported by visitors is the sight of faint lights flickering between the graves, like lanterns being carried by unseen hands. Skeptics argue that they're reflections from passing cars or the glow of fireflies, but those who've seen them insist the lights move purposefully, weaving between tombstones and vanishing when approached. Some even claim the lights seem to lead them toward older, forgotten graves covered in moss and ivy. Even during the day, there are moments when the atmosphere of Forest Lawn shifts, when the wind stops, and a heavy stillness settles over the grounds. Some visitors have said they feel watched, as if unseen eyes follow them from behind headstones. A few report hearing faint prayers or whispers in the chapel, even when the doors are locked. For paranormal researchers, Forest Lawn Cemetery remains one of Ohio's most quietly active sites. The activity here is not violent or aggressive, it's mournful, almost sorrowful in tone. Those who have spent time walking its paths describe a feeling of deep melancholy, as though the very earth holds on to the memories of countless griefs and losses. The spirits that dwell here, they say, are not seeking to harm, but to be remembered. As the night deepens and fog rolls through the low-lying sections of the cemetery, Forest Lawn becomes a different world, one where time blurs and the line between life and death seems thinner. The sound of distant footsteps, the shadow beneath the trees, the faint sob of an unseen widow, all remind visitors that this is not merely a place of rest, but one of lingering emotion. And so, Forest Lawn Cemetery endures, beautiful, solemn, and deeply haunted. For those who walk its paths after dark, it is a place where history breathes, and the past refuses to fade. Echoing endlessly through the whispers of the Ohio night, St. Patrick's Cemetery in Maine is a historic and solemn burial ground, nestled on a gentle hillside and surrounded by dense woodlands. Established in the early 1800s, the cemetery serves as the final resting place for generations of local families, early settlers, and devoted members of the Catholic community. By day, the cemetery exudes quiet reverence, with sunlight filtering through tall maples and pines, gravestones ranging from simple markers to ornate monuments, and winding paths inviting visitors to reflect on the lives memorialized there. Yet as evening descends and mist rises from the low-lying areas, the cemetery takes on an ethereal quality that has inspired countless stories of the supernatural. Locals and visitors alike recount experiences of phantom figures dressed in priestly attire, voices chanting prayers in the darkness, and flickering lights hovering among the oldest graves. These reports have solidified St. Patrick's Cemetery as one of Maine's most compelling and haunted locations. Among the most commonly reported phenomena are the phantom figures in priestly attire. Witnesses describe men in long robes, often wearing traditional cossacks or clerical collars, appearing along the old pathways or standing near mausoleums. The figures sometimes carry small objects resembling rosaries or prayer books and are often seen bowing or gesturing as if performing religious rites. Many who have observed these apparitions report that they vanish when approached, sometimes dissolving into the mist that frequently blankets the cemetery. Others have described a feeling of solemnity and reverence that lingers after the figures disappear, as if the spirits are performing a sacred duty that transcends the living world. These ghostly priests are most frequently seen near the oldest graves, some of which date back to the founding families of the town, suggesting a connection between the apparitions and the cemetery's deep spiritual history. Voices chanting prayers are another recurrent phenomenon at St. Patrick's Cemetery. Visitors often report hearing the soft, rhythmic sounds of Latin prayers, sometimes echoing across the grounds or emanating from particular mausoleums or grave clusters. The voices are rarely coherent when transcribed, blending into one another to create an almost otherworldly harmony. In some cases, the chanting is accompanied by a faint scent of incense or candle wax, adding to the impression that the cemetery is inhabited by lingering ritual energy. These auditory experiences are typically strongest during the evening or in early morning hours when the cemetery is empty, and they often coincide with visual sightings of the phantom priests, creating a multi-sensory encounter that leaves witnesses both awed and unsettled. Flickering lights among the oldest graves add a further layer of intrigue to the cemetery's haunting. Visitors describe small orbs of light moving between tombstones, sometimes stationary for moments and sometimes darting quickly across the landscape. The lights vary in color, often appearing as soft white, amber, or faint blue glows, and they disappear when approached or illuminated with flashlights. Some suggest that these lights are manifestations of spiritual energy tied to the deceased, acting as markers of sacred presence or as protective entities guarding the resting places of the departed. Others believe the lights could be residual echoes of past rituals or long-forgotten candles left at graves. Regardless of the explanation, the lights create an atmosphere of mystery and otherworldliness, enhancing the cemetery's reputation as a site where the veil between the living and the dead is thin. One particularly striking account comes from a local historian who visited St. Patrick's Cemetery on a foggy autumn night. As he walked through the older sections, he noticed a figure in priestly attire standing near a large marble monument. The figure appeared to be in mid-prayer, head bowed, hands clasped around what seemed to be a rosary. A faint, melodic chanting rose in the air, echoing softly across the gravestones. The historian attempted to approach, but the figures slowly dissolved into the mist, leaving only a lingering sense of solemnity. Moments later, small orbs of light flickered between nearby tombstones, illuminating engraved names briefly before vanishing entirely. The experience left him with a profound awareness of the cemetery's history, the lives interred there, and the spiritual energy that seems to persist long after death. Paranormal investigators have been drawn to St. Patrick's Cemetery for decades due to the consistency and detail of these reports. Using night vision cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field meters, they have documented unusual activity, including shadowy forms, unexplained chanting, and flickering lights. EMF readings frequently spike near the oldest graves and mausoleums, suggesting concentrations of residual energy. Audio devices occasionally capture faint whispers, prayer-like chants, or footsteps, even when the area is completely empty. While skeptics argue that environmental factors, imagination, or atmospheric conditions may explain some occurrences, the repetition and similarity of reports over decades indicate that the cemetery harbors phenomena that are difficult to account for. The history of St. Patrick's Cemetery offers context for these experiences. The cemetery's ties to the Catholic Church, combined with centuries of religious observance, likely contribute to the consistent appearances of figures in priestly attire and the chanting that echoes through the night. The fog-prone terrain, dense trees, and uneven landscape enhance visual distortions, while the history of prayers, rituals, and devotion may have left residual energy that manifests as apparitions, sounds, and lights. Visitors to St. Patrick's Cemetery are encouraged to exercise respect and caution, particularly after dark. While the supernatural encounters are generally non-threatening, the combination of apparitions, chanting, and flickering lights can be unsettling. Walking carefully along marked paths, refraining from disturbing graves, and limiting time spent in fog-heavy areas helps ensure a safer experience. Those who explore the cemetery with quiet observation and respect often leave with a deep sense of history, awe, and connection to the spirits said to linger among the tombstones. St. Patrick's Cemetery in Maine remains a place where history, devotion, and the unexplained converge. Phantom figures in priestly attire, voices chanting prayers, and flickering lights among the oldest graves create an atmosphere that is haunting, reverent, and mysterious. For those who venture through its grounds after dark, St. Patrick's Cemetery is more than a resting place. It is a realm where the past endures, where spiritual echoes persist, and where the presence of the departed can be felt in profound and unexplainable ways. Memorial Park Cemetery in Kentucky is a historic and sprawling burial ground, nestled amid gently rolling hills and shaded by mature oaks and maples. Established in the late 1800s, the cemetery has served as the final resting place for generations of families, war veterans, and prominent local citizens. By day, the grounds are quiet and contemplative, with sunlight casting patterns across rows of gravestones, mausoleums, and ornate monuments. Gravel paths wind through the property, leading visitors past old wrought iron fences, stone markers, and family plots that have remained untouched for decades. Yet as night falls, Memorial Park Cemetery takes on a more mysterious and eerie quality. Locals and visitors report unsettling experiences. Shadowy forms standing silently among the graves, figures appearing near old fences, and ghostly apparitions that vanish the moment anyone tries to touch them. These experiences have cemented Memorial Park Cemetery's reputation as one of Kentucky's most haunted burial grounds. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at Memorial Park Cemetery is the presence of shadowy forms. Witnesses describe human-like silhouettes that seem to linger near grave markers, standing motionless for long periods. Some report the sensation of being observed, even when they are alone, and occasionally notice the shadows disappearing when they move closer. These forms are often seen at the edges of paths or near older monuments, their outlines sometimes blurred by darkness or fog. Witnesses often describe an overwhelming sense of solemnity, as if the figures are silently guarding the cemetery or replaying moments from the past. The shadowy forms appear to be aware of the living, yet avoid direct contact, reinforcing the eerie sense of a presence that is both intangible and persistent. Another phenomenon reported at Memorial Park Cemetery involves figures appearing near old fences. Many of the cemetery's boundaries are lined with wrought iron or wooden fencing, some of which is weathered and rusted with age. Visitors recount seeing ghostly figures materialize beside these fences, sometimes leaning against them or walking along them before disappearing entirely. These appearances often coincide with sudden drops in temperature, a phenomenon that many associate with paranormal energy. Some witnesses claim to have seen figures reaching toward the gravestones or moving in ways that suggest deliberate action, only for the figures to vanish completely when approached. These encounters have contributed to the local lore surrounding the cemetery, reinforcing the idea that certain areas, especially those near the oldest fences, harbor concentrated spiritual energy. Ghostly apparitions that vanish before being touched are another hallmark of Memorial Park Cemetery's haunting. Witnesses describe seeing fully formed figures, men, women, or children walking along pathways, sitting on monuments, or standing by graves. In many cases, these apparitions appear detailed and lifelike, sometimes wearing period clothing or garments consistent with the era of the cemetery's founding. When approached, however, the figures disappear instantly, as though made of mist or shadow. Some visitors report a faint smell of flowers, tobacco, or candle smoke remaining after the apparition vanishes, while others describe a sudden sensation of cold that lingers for minutes. These encounters often leave witnesses shaken, but also with a sense of awe at the cemetery's lingering spiritual presence. One particularly memorable account comes from a local historian who visited Memorial Park Cemetery on a foggy October evening. As he walked along a path near an old iron fence, he noticed a shadowy figure standing silently among the graves. The figure did not move, yet the historian felt a palpable awareness of being observed. Moments later, another apparition appeared, this time dressed in early 20th century clothing, walking slowly along the path. When he attempted to approach, the figure dissolved into the fog, leaving only the faint rustle of leaves and a sudden chill in the air. As he continued his exploration, small shadowy forms seemed to flicker in and out of existence near old family plots and monuments, further reinforcing the cemetery's reputation as a site where the past and present overlap in mysterious ways. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Memorial Park Cemetery because of the consistency of eyewitness accounts. Using night vision cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field meters, investigators have documented unusual activity, including shadowy figures, unexplained sounds, and sudden temperature fluctuations. EMF readings often spike near older graves, fences, and monuments, suggesting that residual energy is concentrated in these areas. Audio recordings occasionally capture faint footsteps, whispers, or indistinct voices when no one else is present. While skeptics argue that environmental factors, imagination, or low-light conditions could explain some of the phenomena, the repeated and detailed reports across decades indicate that Memorial Park Cemetery is a place where the unexplained persists. The history of the cemetery provides context for these supernatural encounters. Many of the older plots belong to families who endured tragedies, disease, and early deaths, leaving behind emotional energy that may linger. The combination of fog-prone terrain, mature trees, and aged monuments creates conditions conducive to the perception of ghostly activity. Shadowy figures, apparitions, and phantom presences seem to concentrate near areas of historical significance, such as old fences, mausoleums, and family plots, suggesting a connection between past lives and a lingering energy that continues to inhabit the cemetery. Visitors to Memorial Park Cemetery are advised to exercise caution and respect, particularly after dark. While the experiences are generally non-threatening, the combination of shadowy figures, sudden cold, and vanishing apparitions can be unsettling. Those who walk quietly along the paths avoid disturbing graves and remain mindful of their surroundings, often leave with a deeper appreciation of the cemetery's history and a lasting impression of the supernatural activity that defines its grounds. Shadowy forms standing silently, figures appearing near old fences, and ghostly apparitions that vanish before being touched create an atmosphere that is haunting, mysterious, and deeply compelling. For those who explore its paths after dark, Memorial Park Cemetery is more than a resting place. It's a space where the past persists, where memories linger, and where the boundary between the living and the dead feels thin and permeable. Oakland Cemetery in Iowa is a historic burial ground that has stood as a silent witness to generations of the town's residents. Established in the early 19th century, it serves as the final resting place for many of the town's founders, pioneers, and longtime families. By day, the cemetery offers a peaceful setting with wide grassy expanses, towering oaks, and rows of gravestones ranging from modest markers to elaborate monuments. The air carries a sense of history and reflection, inviting visitors to pause and contemplate the lives commemorated there. Yet, as dusk falls and fog settles among the tombstones, the atmosphere transforms. Many locals and visitors report experiencing unexplainable phenomena, including apparitions of town founders, phantom children playing among the graves, and whispers carried through the breeze that seem to come from no visible source. These occurrences have made Oakland Cemetery a focal point for stories of the supernatural in Iowa. Among the most commonly reported phenomena are the apparitions of town founders. Witnesses describe seeing figures dressed in 19th century attire, often standing near the oldest sections of the cemetery. Some appear in formal coats and waistcoats, while others wear long dresses typical of the era. These figures are frequently seen near the gravestones of prominent families, sometimes pacing quietly along the paths or standing in silent observation. Visitors have recounted the unsettling sensation that these figures are watching them. Yet when approached, the apparitions vanish as if they were never there. Some eyewitnesses have claimed to see the figures engaged in gestures that suggest conversation or reflection, though no voices accompany the visual sightings. The presence of these apparitions contributes to the sense that Oakland Cemetery is more than just a resting place. It's a place where history lingers, and the founder's presence is still felt. Phantom children are another commonly reported phenomenon. Visitors often describe seeing small, fleeting figures darting between tombstones, sometimes chasing one another or playing hide-and-seek among the older graves. These children are often dressed in vintage clothing, reflective of the late 1800s or early 1900s. Witnesses report that the children appear joyful and harmless, yet their sudden disappearance can be startling. Some have attempted to approach them, only to find the figures vanish into thin air or melt into the shadows of the gravestones. The phantom children are most frequently seen near family plots, particularly those belonging to long-established families, suggesting that their presence may be tied to historical lives that left an impression on the cemetery grounds. Their appearances are often accompanied by a faint sensation of movement in the grass or the soft patter of tiny footsteps, which vanish when investigated. Unexplained whispers, drifting through the breeze, are another hallmark of Oakland Cemetery's hauntings. Visitors have reported hearing soft voices carrying through the trees and between the gravestones, even when no other people are present. The whispers are often indecipherable, a mix of syllables and murmurs that seem to echo from the very air itself. Some witnesses report that the whispers rise in intensity as they approach the older sections of the cemetery or when passing near mausoleums. At times, the voices seem almost conversational, as though the deceased are communicating among themselves or reaching out to the living. The combination of these whispers with sightings of apparitions creates an immersive experience that many describe as both eerie and poignant. A direct link to the past that transcends time. One memorable account comes from a local historian who visited Oakland Cemetery on a misty autumn evening. While walking along a path lined with oak trees, he noticed a figure in period attire standing near one of the oldest family plots. Moments later, he heard the faint laughter of children, followed by the sound of small feet running over the grass. Looking closer, he saw fleeting figures moving between the tombstones, vanishing when he attempted to focus on them. As he continued, he noticed a soft, almost melodic whisper carried on the wind, repeating indistinct phrases that seemed to echo from the oldest monuments. The experience left him with a profound sense of connection to the cemetery's history, as if the lives of the departed had left an indelible mark upon the grounds. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Oakland Cemetery because of the consistent nature of the reports. Using night vision cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field detectors, they have captured unusual activity, including shadowy figures, unexplained lights, and disembodied voices. EMF readings often spike near older graves and mausoleums, suggesting residual energy is concentrated in specific areas. Audio devices occasionally pick up whispers or murmurs when no one else is present, and night vision recordings frequently reveal movements or shapes that cannot be explained by natural causes. While skeptics attribute some occurrences to environmental factors or optical illusions, the repetition and similarity of the reports across decades indicate that Oakland Cemetery holds enduring paranormal significance. The history of Oakland Cemetery provides context for these hauntings. Many of the original settlers and early townspeople buried here endured hardship, disease, and sudden loss, leaving behind emotional energy that some believe continues to resonate. The combination of fog, mature trees, and historic monuments contributes to optical and auditory distortions, which may explain some of the phenomena. Yet, the frequency and consistency of sightings, especially the apparitions of founders, phantom children, and the whispers in the winds, suggest that something unexplainable persists on these grounds, a reminder that the past is never truly gone. Visitors to Oakland Cemetery are encouraged to approach with respect, especially after dark. While the supernatural experiences are generally non-threatening, the presence of apparitions, whispers, and fleeting figures can be disorienting. Walking quietly, observing without disturbing graves, and remaining mindful of the surroundings often results in a safe and meaningful encounter. Many who visit leave with a heightened awareness of history, the lives memorialized, and the inexplicable presence that permeates the cemetery. Oakland Cemetery in Iowa remains a place where history, memory, and the supernatural intersect. Apparitions of town founders, phantom children playing among tombstones, and whispers carried on the wind create an atmosphere that is both haunting and captivating. For those who explore its grounds after dark, Oakland Cemetery is more than a resting place. It is a location where the past endures, where the presence of the departed can be felt, and where the boundary between the living and the dead seems remarkably thin. Maplewood Cemetery in New Hampshire is a historic burial ground, quietly nestled among rolling hills and dense woodlands. Established in the early 1800s, it has served as the final resting place for generations of local families, prominent town figures, and long-forgotten pioneers. By day, the cemetery is a peaceful and reflective place, with sunlight filtering through tall maples and oaks, casting dappled shadows across rows of gravestones. The monuments range from simple headstones to elaborately carved marble and granite markers, some weathered and leaning with age, while others stand pristine and commanding. Gravel paths wind through the cemetery, leading visitors past family plots, mausoleums, and forgotten corners where nature has reclaimed the land. Yet, as evening descends and fog drifts among the tombstones, Maplewood Cemetery transforms into a place of mystery and subtle unease. Locals and visitors have recounted experiences of floating lanterns, figures in period dresses, and voices carried by the wind in the darkest corners of the cemetery, creating a reputation for paranormal activity that has persisted for decades. Among the most frequently reported phenomena are the floating lanterns. Witnesses describe soft, amber, or white lights that hover just above the ground or drift between graves, often moving in ways that defy explanation. The lanterns are seen mostly in the older sections of the cemetery, where family plots have been left untouched for centuries. Some visitors claim the lights appear in pairs, gliding slowly across the paths, as if guiding invisible travelers, while others have observed them darting quickly between trees and monuments. vanishing as soon as they attempt to approach. Many who encounter these lanterns report a sense of calm mixed with awe, though the sudden appearance and disappearance of the lights can also be startling. Paranormal researchers speculate that these lanterns may represent residual energy, perhaps tied to candlelit vigils or memorials from the past, though no definitive explanation has ever been found. Another haunting feature of Maplewood Cemetery is the appearance of figures in period dresses. Visitors describe seeing women in long gowns, sometimes with shawls or bonnets, walking slowly along the paths or pausing near gravestones. These figures are often detailed enough to convey the clothing styles and fashion of the 19th century, appearing ghostly but distinctly human. In some accounts, the figures are seen in pairs, engaged in silent conversation, or standing alone with bowed heads as if paying respect to a grave. When approached, the figures invariably vanish, leaving only empty space and an almost tangible sense of absence. Some witnesses have noted that these apparitions seem to be most active during foggy evenings or early mornings, suggesting that the cemetery's atmospheric conditions may enhance the visual manifestation of these spirits. The repeated sightings over generations have led many to believe that these are not mere illusions, but echoes of the cemetery's long and layered history. Voices carried by the wind are another hallmark of Maplewood Cemetery's mysterious reputation. Many visitors report hearing faint whispers or indistinct phrases drifting through the trees and across gravestones. At times, these voices sound like calls for attention or prayers murmured by unseen figures, while other instances resemble the soft laughter of children playing. The sounds are typically heard in the darker corners of the cemetery, particularly in areas far from the main paths, where dense vegetation and older monuments create an intimate and enclosed environment. Witnesses often describe a sudden drop in temperature when the voices are audible, adding to the sense of an otherworldly presence. Some believe these sounds are the lingering memories of past visitors or mourners, while others suggest they are manifestations of the spirits of those interred within the cemetery. Regardless of the explanation, the auditory experiences leave a lasting impression on anyone who encounters them. One memorable account comes from a local historian who explored Maplewood Cemetery one autumn evening. As he walked along a fog-laden path, he noticed a soft amber light floating between two old oaks. The lantern moved slowly, as if guiding him toward an area of particularly old gravestones. Moments later, he glimpsed a figure in a long dress standing near a family plot, seemingly gazing down at a weathered headstone. As he drew closer, the figure disappeared into the mist. At the same time, a soft, indistinct whisper carried through the air, echoing off nearby monuments, leaving him with the sensation that unseen presences were surrounding him, observing without malice but insisting on recognition. The combination of floating lights, ghostly figures, and the ethereal voices created an immersive experience that felt both haunting and reverent. A direct connection to the history preserved within the cemetery's grounds. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Maplewood Cemetery due to the consistency of these reports. Night vision cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field detectors have documented anomalous activity, including moving lights, shadowy figures, and unexplained audio phenomena. EMF spikes often occur near older monuments and family plots, suggesting concentrated residual energy. Audio devices occasionally capture faint murmurs, indistinct phrases, or other sounds without a clear source. While skeptics attribute some sightings to environmental effects or optical illusions, the repeated and detailed accounts from witnesses over decades suggest a more mysterious reality. The cemetery's history provides context for these phenomena. Many of those buried at Maplewood Cemetery experienced hardship, illness, and early death, leaving behind emotional energy that may persist in subtle forms. The foggy terrain, mature trees, and old monuments create conditions conducive to visual and auditory anomalies. But the recurring patterns of sightings, floating lanterns, period-dressed figures, and whispering voices suggest that the past continues to assert a presence. Visitors are encouraged to approach the cemetery with respect, particularly after dark. While the encounters are rarely threatening, the combination of apparitions, floating lights, and voices can be disorienting. Quiet observation, careful walking, and attention to surroundings often results in safe and meaningful experiences. Many who explore Maplewood Cemetery leave with a heightened appreciation for its history and the lingering presence that defines its nighttime ambience. Maplewood Cemetery in New Hampshire remains a place where history, memory, and the unexplained intersect. Floating lanterns, figures in period dresses, and voices carried by the wind create an atmosphere that is both haunting and captivating for those who venture through its fog-laden paths. After dark, Maplewood Cemetery is more than a resting place. It is a space where the past endures, where unseen presences linger, and where the boundary between the living and the dead feels strikingly thin. Cypress Grove Cemetery in Pennsylvania is a historic and sprawling burial ground, quietly tucked away amid rolling fields and thick woodlands. Established in the late 1700s, it holds the remains of early settlers, Revolutionary War veterans, and generations of local families. By day, the cemetery is a tranquil place, with sunlight filtering through the towering cypress and oak trees, illuminating rows of weathered tombstones and ornate monuments. Gravel paths wind between family plots, leading visitors past iron fences, crypts, and centuries-old markers that bear the names of pioneers who shaped the surrounding region. Yet as night falls, Cypress Grove Cemetery transforms. Dense fog often rolls across the grounds, shrouding the graves in an eerie atmosphere. Locals and visitors have long reported unusual phenomena: shadowy figures near old tombstones, cold spots in open fields, and ghostly lights that seem to dance in the fog, earning the cemetery a reputation as one of Pennsylvania's most haunted burial grounds. Among the most commonly reported occurrences are shadowy figures glimpsed near old tombstones. Witnesses describe dark silhouettes that appear to drift silently between graves, often lingering near markers that date back to the cemetery's earliest days. Some say the figures resemble people wearing 18th or 19th century clothing, though the details are often obscured by darkness or mist. Visitors frequently report feeling an overwhelming sense of being watched, even when they are alone, and occasionally notice these figures disappearing the moment they attempt to approach. The shadowy forms are most commonly seen at the edges of paths or near older family plots, suggesting a link between the cemetery's earliest intimates and the lingering presence of these spectral entities. Cold spots are another hallmark of Cypress Grove Cemetery's haunted reputation. Open fields and clearings throughout the cemetery are often described as unnaturally chilly, even on warm nights. Witnesses report a sudden drop in temperature that can last several minutes, accompanied by a sensation of unease or being observed. Some have claimed that the cold intensifies near certain gravestones or monuments, particularly those belonging to early settlers who endured harsh lives on the frontier. These inexplicable drops in temperature often coincide with other paranormal activity, such as fleeting shadows or whispers carried on the wind, suggesting that the cemetery harbors concentrated residual energy in specific areas. Ghostly lights are also frequently reported. Many visitors describe seeing faint orbs of light floating among the graves, sometimes hovering above tombstones or drifting along the paths. Some witnesses report that the lights seem to flicker or pulse, as though responding to their presence, while others have observed them darting between trees or disappearing suddenly when approached. Paranormal enthusiasts speculate that these lights may represent residual energy from candlelit vigils, lanterns used by early visitors, or spirits attempting to make themselves known. Regardless of their origin, the lights add an ethereal quality to the cemetery at night, reinforcing its reputation as a place where the line between the living and the dead is thin. One particularly vivid account comes from a local historian who visited Cypress Grove Cemetery on a foggy October evening. Walking along a path lined with ancient tombstones, he noticed a dark figure standing silently near a family plot. The figure appeared still, yet the historian felt an immediate sense of being observed. Moments later, a chill swept through the open field ahead, and a series of small, glowing orbs appeared, floating among the fog and shifting around the gravestones. As he moved closer to investigate, the shadowy figure vanished, leaving the historian with a lingering sense of unease and awe. The experience, he later explained, was unlike anything he had encountered in his decades of studying the cemetery, combining visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena into a single, unforgettable encounter. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Cypress Grove Cemetery due to the consistency and detail of these reports. Using night vision cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field meters, they have documented unusual activity, including shadowy shapes, sudden temperature drops, and floating lights. EMF readings often spike near the oldest graves and family plots, suggesting that residual energy is concentrated in these areas. Audio recordings sometimes capture faint whispers, rustling, or disembodied voices, even when no one else is present. While skeptics argue that environmental factors, optical illusions, or the imagination could account for some sightings, the repetition of these experiences over decades lends credibility to the cemetery's haunted reputation. Many of those interred here lived difficult lives, enduring harsh winters, illness, and early death. The emotional energy of their experiences, combined with the foggy terrain, dense trees, and aged monuments, may contribute to the reported supernatural activity. Shadowy figures, cold spots, and ghostly lights are most commonly seen in areas connected to the cemetery's earliest burials, suggesting a link between the past and the lingering presence that persists in the present. Visitors to Cypress Grove Cemetery are encouraged to approach with caution and respect, particularly after dark. While the experiences are rarely threatening, shadowy figures, sudden cold, and unexplained lights can be disorienting. Quiet observation, careful walking, and mindfulness of surroundings often result in safe encounters while allowing visitors to appreciate the cemetery's rich history and enduring mysteries. Cypress Grove Cemetery in Pennsylvania remains a place where history, memory, and the supernatural intersect. Shadowy figures near old tombstones, cold spots in open fields, and ghostly lights dancing in the fog create an atmosphere that is haunting, evocative, and deeply compelling for those who explore its paths after dark. Cypress Grove Cemetery is more than a resting place. It is a space where the past lingers, unseen presences endure, and the boundary between the living and the dead feels remarkably thin. These 25 haunted graveyards in small-town America remind us that death is not always the end. From phantom mourners and ghostly children to shadowy figures and unexplained lights, the spirits linger, silently watching and wandering among the tombstones. Thank you for walking with us through these chilling resting places. Subscribe, like, and click the bell to continue exploring the most haunted corners of America, where the dead never truly rest and the whispers of the past remain ever present.